Good evening, everyone. My name is Linda Bacon, and I'm the Ward 5 City Councilor and Chair of the Ordinance Committee. And we will be having a hybrid meeting tonight. And so I'm calling this meeting to order on Tuesday, September 12th at 6:30. Online members of the committee are Councilor Israel Rivera and Councilor Jose Maldonado Velez. And also in attendance is Councilor Will Puello. I am expecting the other two remaining council members, but they will both be a little bit late. Okay. So Jeffrey, is Amie Matos available? Is Amie Matos in the chambers? No. I don't see her online.
No, she has not arrived yet online.
Okay. All right, then we'll let that be. And are the
Chair?
folks, yes?
Yeah, so I can make the motion to take a roll call vote that for the purposes of this meeting will be applicable to all motions to suspend the rules, remove an item from the table, package items together, or open a public hearing unless there is an objection.
Do I have a second? Councilor Rivera? Well, I can second it. I'll second it. So we have to do a roll call to go into this motion. So I'm a yes. Councilor Bacon, Councilor Jose Maldonado Velez,
Yes.
Councilor Israel Rivera. You're muted, Councilor Rivera. Councilor Rivera, can you unmute yourself? I'm just texting him to let him know he's muted on Zoom. I don't know. I'm unable to establish a quorum at this time, so I'm waiting for Councilor Rivera to acknowledge. I apologize for the delay, but I have to have 3 to proceed. Councilor Maldonado Velez, I texted Councilor Rivera to let him know he's muted on Zoom.
Let me try to call him. Give me 1 second.
Thank you. We're just waiting for a quorum. Not hearing from Councilor Rivera, I would like to ask Councilor Puello if he'd be willing to sit in to make the quorum for the meeting so we can open the public hearing.
Yeah, I'm good with that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so now that we've established a quorum, I would like to entertain a motion to take up item 2 and open the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing, item 2, a special permit application, Euphorium LLC at 15 Main Street for an adult use cannabis retail Tier 1 cultivation and manufacturing, non-chemical extraction establishment. So we have folks here in the chamber with us, and you can either come in and sit at the desk and press the button on the microphone, and when you see the green light, you'll be able to be heard. And if you can give us your names and address for the record when you're speaking. And then if you could just sort of take us from the top down your application, and then just understand that we'll be seeking any answers to open things from the letters of July 28th from planning and the letter of September 7th from the city engineer.
Okay.
Okay, so hopefully you have all those.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
So I'll start. My name is Ezra Pryzabach. Thank you, Councilor Vacone. This is Marco Aranzulo. I am his consultant. I'm based in Northampton, Massachusetts. If you want to introduce yourself.
Welcome.
My name's Marco, and the owner of Euphorium, the operator, and I look forward to answering the questions.
Okay, welcome.
So I am familiar with the first letter. The letter from the engineer of September 6th is new to us, but I'm sure you'll introduce us.
Okay.
And I would like to share my screen, if I could.
Jeffrey, can you let the applicant share their screen, please?
You should be all set.
Yep.
Oh, thank
It
you.
looks like it's ready to go. Thank you. Okay, so this is Euphorium LLC, proposed micro-vertical cannabis establishment. This is the old Tapestry Health building on 15 Main Street between Race and Main. And this is a really interesting project that we've been working on for a while. And I like it because Marco is going to do a very, very tiny cultivation. A tier 1 is 5,000 square feet. Typically, that is the maximum size for a tier 1. This is going to be 200 square feet. So this is going to be basically a showcase cultivation room to draw customers in. They will be able to come in and see the cultivation through a window. All of the cultivation will serve the retail store itself, so it's not a big operation, not a wholesale operation. And he's going to showcase local growers who have not had the opportunity to enter into the industry themselves. It also has a manufacturing or processing license where he can make products that are developed from the cultivated flower that he produces there and then sell at his retail. So the entire first floor there is 2,900 square feet. About 2,000 square feet of it will be for the retail portion, and then an additional 900 square feet or so is going to be for manufacturing and cultivation and offices. And I'm going to just start from the outside and make our way in here. So as you can see, it's off-street parking as well as on-street parking. The site will be lit with the city fixtures that you can see there. This is a site plan. Looks like you're not able to see the site plan yet. I'm gonna make sure we can see that. Hello. Goodness. My apologies.
Oh, no problem, no rush.
Having trouble with the Zoom. Oh, it's just here. There we go. I'm going to change my screen here.
Okay.
See if I can do the whole thing. Yes, okay.
There we go.
Apologies for the delay. Okay, so this is the survey and site plan. I'm going to go through parking, traffic, and some of the lighting, and bike rack, things like that. So on your left, you can see this is an entrance and exit from the Ray Street side of the facility. Down below is the entrance exit from the Main Street side. Traffic will go in a counterclockwise pattern, and there's roughly 20 spots for customers here. The entrance to the facility is over here with a bike rack proposed for this area as per the ordinance. This area here will be the police department required sally port for deliveries. The dumpster pad will be in there as and trash. Actually, it's the trash produced is going to be small, so it's not a full-size dumpster. It's a large trash bin.
Can I just ask you a couple questions?
Of course.
So you are indicating 20 parking spaces, so I'm thinking those are shared? Because on the engineer's letter, he's talking about 12.
Yeah, I apologize. I just overestimated there. It's 12 in the center plus 2 or 3 on the edge here on the upper corner. So you're right. 12, 13, 14 total available. This, as you can see, is been cordoned off here from the site that is controlled by Euphorium because other tenants can be in this space. But this was something that was not clear that we submitted as an amendment or an addendum to our submittal, which is Marco is leasing the entire building. Any proposed future tenants will also be controlled by Marco. They just will be separate from Euphorium LLC. This is partly because there are potential other license categories like social consumption, which people have been talking about for years. This would allow, going through the similar process, a new special permit, new licensing. When that category becomes available, he's looking to the future to be able to do that at this same space, but have enough space for it.
So can I just clarify? So
Of course.
are those that are cordoned off now available to your control for this special permit at this time, if you needed them?
Yes, we have complete control of the site. As Ezra said, it was just planning ahead. If that social consumption ever came ahead, we kind of tried to make it so that we would be in the position to do so. But there are no other tenants, and there won't be any other tenants. It would only be us.
Yeah.
So we could use the entire parking lot, and if that never comes around and that license class never opened, then it would still be our parking spaces.
Right, because that was just one of the questions in the September 7th letter. What is the backup parking, to the 12? And so it could be what you've shown on this plan.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
and we
makes
do
sense.
have the lease.
Okay.
Well,
Yep.
shows that.
And just to clarify even further why there's a plan and a very specific aspect of the drawing that does separate those spaces, is that if the Cannabis Control Commission introduces that license category and Marco pursues partnership with Social Equity and pursues that license, the Cannabis Control Commission will want both tenants to have their own parking spaces, obviously. So this allows for a new special permit to occur without an amendment to this current special permit that we're pursuing.
Okay, so that'll circle me back to the original question then. What would be the backup plan for additional parking needs
Okay,
that could develop either or?
right.
Since right now it's not a package deal, but you're envisioning that it will be.
That's right. And we don't know. It's entirely possible that Marco will always control it, and this will always be parking or space available for his current proposed license categories now, and that may never come to fruition, but we just wanted to be extra careful of that. So it does serve as extra parking spaces currently for that.
For now, yeah.
Because he
But-
controls
but-
the whole site.
But if there was going to be a new category, if there was going to be one, it would have to be an amended or a new special permit. Because this permit is only for the listed things that we're talking about.
That's correct, yeah.
Right.
And so the new permit would be a
An
separate
additional
entity.
use.
It would be an additional use in this one location
Right,
with a different entity and a different license and
Right.
that whole process.
okay.
But I believe that it's still, the number of parking spaces still covers even that future use.
All right, well, I guess we won't worry about the future.
Okay,
right?
yes.
I do have one thing I could add too. I think you can back me up on this. At the rate that social consumption is moving along, it's probably 4 to 5 years away. At that point, we would know if this is even feasible with
Right.
parking, and at
Right.
that point, if the store, which I hope we get that many customers that it backs up the parking lot, was that situation, we would just look for another spot to do so.
Okay.
So that would essentially be the plan, is
Right,
because there's
right.
such a time gap. We'll know what the parking problems could be at that point, and then
Right.
just look for a different location for that
Right.
other use.
But for the foreseeable future, for this permit, that is available for
100%. We
backup
have
parking.
complete control of that spot, and if we needed it, it's there to be used.
Okay, thanks.
So as far as the rest of the site, if you look at it now, there is a curb cut here, but that will be removed when the Sally Port is there. There is lighting. I'm going to actually go to an image showing the Sally Port so it's clear. So Sally Port will cut across this curb cut here, which we will leave unchanged, but these curbs that have been placed have been there for many years. So we're going to leave that as a non-used entry point there so that we can have a Sally Port, trash bin, and the lighting in that area. One of the questions of planning was, is the trash area properly lit? So we feel that is substantial there, right on the spot where deliveries will occur. And there's also lighting that surrounds the entire building underneath these dark sky compliant lights under the eaves.
Okay.
Here is what the rendering, we've just submitted this requires a special permit through the planning board for the fence height.
Right.
But this is the proposed fence. It's more of a residential looking fence for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. There was one other lighting shot. No. This is the floor plan. I'm not going to go into it too much, and I could, if you'd like, go back into our submittal to go through additional findings. But I think for the purposes of what we're presenting here, I think I've covered most of it. But this floor plan does show just a basic idea of the entry point here, check-in, foyer. Here is the 195 square foot cultivation room with a window, which will be viewable from the floor plan, the retail floor plan here. Workspace and offices here. and vault and storage, which will come in through the delivery area there. And I open it up to any additional questions or more from the list from the engineer's letter.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the committee or members of the council on Zoom that have any questions for the applicant? I'm not hearing anyone. So let me just run down the letters. You covered the waste disposal and the special permit fence issue and what that will look like. And the lighting, now, was that added to the plan or that's just there?
The lighting is, in the plan, we requested a waiver on providing a foot candle drawing of the lighting because of the current lighting
Okay.
that's existing is
Okay,
substantial.
so we've seen that. Okay. And then one of the other recommendations that was made on a previous application, and I'm sure you're aware of it because the host agreements are being modified because of the changes with the commission. And so in order not to hold up applicants who have everything else completed, we're proposing to add a condition to our standard conditions that says that the operations for the special permit begin after either the completion of a host agreement or the approval of a waiver,
Okay.
which is an available option as we understand it.
Yep.
So I just wanted to put that out there.
Great. I wasn't sure if that, I knew the waiver was in discussion, but that is officially available?
Well, it's an option,
Okay.
but it's not something that we can make available to
Okay.
you. It would be, as I understand it, through our legal department and the mayor
Yep.
for
Correct.
that piece.
Yep.
Okay, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. And then, yeah, and I think we're pretty well set with this September 7th letter. Do you want to look at it? Because what I will do with the blessing of the committee is just stipulate when we get to conditions that the letter of planning of July 28th and that letter would be complied with as a condition. We usually just reference those if there's anything that was open when it comes to us.
Okay.
And I mean, you're showing us, and so it's sort of just a check off, but I want to make sure you know what's in there.
Great. I appreciate that. Yeah, so it looks like parking, traffic, addresses the stormwater regulations, which we also requested a waiver for that because there's no change to the site, no change to the surface, there's no impervious surface. And then, information on sanitary sewer service. So we will verify the condition of the existing service and confirm that it is separate from any roof or storm drains prior to application for a building permit. Understood.
Right, and I think that would come up then anyway, but
Okay,
that way you're alerted to it.
makes sense.
All right? Do you mind if I hang on to that?
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay. So this is a public hearing, and so I'm interested to know if there's anyone from the public on Zoom or in the chambers that wishes to speak either in favor or in opposition to this special permit. Councilor Rivera?
Yes, thank you for recognizing me, Madam Chair. It's not necessarily speaking in favor or against. I guess I have just with regards to being a business in a community that has been historically marginalized. What are some priorities for them as a social equity applicant to make sure that they're trying to also meet the needs as much as they can of the community that they'll be servicing? And we're not asking for you guys to go ahead and be the saviors of the community, but at the end of the day, if you're gonna be in a community, and I think for me, having grown up in this particular community, it's different when businesses actually are a part of a community versus just functioning within the community. As you'll see later on, if you're still here, there are some business owners that function within the community and are a part of the community. And I'm wondering if that's something that you guys prioritize as a business. Thank you for your time too.
Thank you, Councilor Rivera. I always appreciate you bringing this up, and I'm inspired by this project. I'm going to let Marco talk about sort of a 3-point plan he has, and we can discuss it more.
I appreciate the question, and I appreciate why you want to know. And the short answer is yes, I would like to be more than a business here. I do want to be part of the community and help the community wherever I can. And some of the things that I've come up with are kind of multifolded. And I've kind of inspired by some of the things I've heard, and even my own goings through this process helped us get some of these ideas. And that's kind of where the guest grower idea came in. As you may or may not know, this is not an easy process, and I don't think that the social equity applicants have it any easier, if not harder, with some of the things I've seen. And I know for a fact that there's a lot of people out there that will never get the opportunity to do this, and that's where the cultivating and the guest cultivator and guest manufacturers came in. I want to team up with people from the actual community that would love to be in this type of work but can't get a chance, whether somebody won't hire them, they don't have the money, they don't have the funds, whatever it is. I want to be able to reach out and meet people that would love to become actual licensed cultivators at some point, or just have the ability to showcase their products so that they can get with, become a head grower someplace. And the same thing with the manufacturing. It was never for wholesale. Yes, I'm going to put those products into the store, but not just labeled as Euphorium. When we bring in guest growers or guest manufacturers that are looking to break into the industry, they would have as much input as the labels so that they're recognized. And when they go back out, they can say, hey, look, I worked with these guys. The products are on all these shelves in there. People love the product. They're moving. So that is one aspect of what we wanted to do, was give people from the direct community here in Holyoke the opportunity to get involved in this industry. And again, as you probably know, it's very difficult to break in. I'm not an MSO. I have no outside investors. I don't have some big trust fund. This is us putting everything we have into it. And that made me realize that I was fortunate, and I would like to get other people who don't have that opportunity the option of doing that. Another aspect of is I want to hire directly from the community. And I've joined a local cannabis group, and I've met a few people that once we get a little farther from the community that I would bring in to work with us as well. One of the other aspects is the floors and some of the walls in the place. I actually want to get local artists to come in and actually do murals and then epoxy over the floor so that when people come in, their work is there. And right now the idea is that we're going to break it into like a 4x8 or 5x8 squares all throughout the place. Paint basically kind of crisscross so it looks like big frames, and then have the local artists come in and they can mural the floors and then different walls, and then I'll epoxy over everything. And that would, again, just trying to get people who are trying to break into different aspects, whether it's art, cannabis, give them an opportunity so people can come see their work. Another aspect of the community that I would like to do is I would like to actually host event. It's not kind of like an event where they can come in and I can help, and along with some things I learned from Ezra, how to get involved, how to get involved in the industry, and help them with their business plans, the security plans, the operating plans. I mean, there's just dozens and dozens of things that the CCC require. And having gone through it and knowing what a nightmare it is to go through, even with somebody as experienced as Ezra, I would like to help people with that, because it's not just, here, fill out this one-page application and you can get into the industry. So that's something else I want to do. As we were talking about earlier, if the opportunity ever comes around, the social consumption, it's going to be open to social equity applicants first. I don't think it's going to be a very, very easy business model to use, but if I can partner with somebody and give them the space to open social consumption, that's something else I would like to do, and it would be somebody from the direct community if they wanted to pursue that. And again, that's if that ever becomes legal and finds its way into the legal cannabis world. I've also started to just look at different aspects of like some of the youth leagues, and if possible, and it's allowed, because I know certain communities have regulations against cannabis businesses donating to it, but I'd also like to donate, if possible, to some of the youth sports leagues, because that is probably something that a lot of people from the community maybe don't have that opportunity to get involved in. And if we could do something like that, where it would help somebody get into a sports league or donate directly to the league, things of that nature. But I would like to be part of the community. This isn't my first retail situation. And where we had the other shop, it wasn't cannabis. We were involved in the community. We got involved in actually the sports athletic league for kids who wanted to get involved in boxing, and we were doing donations. So I'd like to do that again, because I know it does make an impact. And those are just a few ways. And if there's other things that come up, I'd actually look and try to follow some of the news and see what's going on. So for instance, I've seen the article that just came out about the busing situation and the kids that are walking from Lyman Terrace, I believe it was, all the way over to Kelly School. And one of the I guess parents or grandparents that was interviewed talked about how the sidewalks weren't even shoveled. If there's a way for us as a business to get involved and help, I would certainly, once we're up and running, of course, be more than happy to help where we can in issues like that. I'm sure there's a lot of businesses that could do it, and if we can be one of them that help, then that would absolutely be great. So that's just kind of it in a nutshell, and but we do want to be more than part of it, more than just a business here, and we, even though I currently live out of state, that's just because I can't afford to move and open this type of business at the same time. Eventually I will move up to Massachusetts, hopefully within the next, once the business is open, within a year or two, and be local. So, but again, trying to balance both it would be impossible.
Holyoke is a great place.
It seems like it. We actually just ate down the street at the little Colombian place, and it was out of this world.
Those are my boys. Yeah,
we had the rice and beans. I'm vegetarian, so I went
they're
rice
from
and
the Flats
beans.
too.
Yeah,
they're from that community too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
We got this little corn thing with cheese in it, which was, I love anything with cheese. So, and then the rice and beans as well was phenomenal.
So
very good.
I just wanted to say I appreciate your answer and thank you. I usually ask everyone that comes forward the same question with regards to that, because ultimately there are opportunities that some of us have and that some of us don't. And I am a true believer of when you gain that opportunity or that space in the room, it's upon us to kind of share that when we can and how we can, in a way that makes sense to us, obviously, right? But thank you for your answer. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I look forward to possibly working with you in the future on some of these things.
All set. So I'd like to note that Councilor Jourdain has joined us on Zoom. And Councilor Jourdain, I did see your hand earlier.
I just wanted to make note that I was here for the presentation, Madam Chair, that's all.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing or hearing anyone else from the public, so I guess we will note that there has been no response for the public comment portion of the public hearing. Committee members, do you have any other questions for the applicant? Not hearing any, not seeing any hands, is there a committee member that would like to offer a motion relative to the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
With, I believe that was a motion to close the public hearing, but I want to translate because it was very muffled.
Yes, motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, and I heard the second. So all in favor, and we have to do that by a roll call. Linda Bacon, yes. Counselor Israel Rivera.
Yes.
Counselor Kevin Jourdain.
Yes,
Counselor Jose Maldonado Velez.
Yes.
Counselor Will Puella. Oh, he may have left now that he saw that we have a quorum, but usually we call the person till the one agenda item is done, but it is a legal closing of the public hearing because we do have a quorum. And so the public hearing is now closed. Committee members, what is your wish? And if there is going to be a motion to grant the special permit, I would just remind committee members that I do have the conditions to read into the record.
Yep. So motion to approve the special permit with the standard conditions.
second.
Okay, and I'm going to read the conditions into the record. The standard conditions are, one, that the owner of the building always pay the commercial property tax rate to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local laws for the duration of the special permit. Two, that the business retains a minimum 30% Holyoke residents for non-security jobs. Three, that the hiring preference be given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police or are a retired member of another police department that now lives in the city of Holyoke. Four, there shall be no marijuana consumption allowed on site. Five, that the hours of operation be set according to city ordinances. Six, that the applicant must abide by the Massachusetts general laws and guidances from the Cannabis Control Commission. Seven, that the petitioner/applicant shall conform with city and state health laws, rules, and regulations, including odor nuisance controls, for the duration of the permit. Eight, that if substantial progress has not occurred within 2 years of issuance of the special permit, an extension shall be required, and that's something you have to seek. Nine, that we discussed earlier in the public hearing, was that the operations for the special permit will begin after either the completion of a host agreement or approval of a waiver. And 10, that we also discussed during the public hearing, that the applicant will comply with the letters dated July 28th from planning and September 7th from the engineer. And those are agreeable to the applicant? Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to grant the special permit. The conditions have been read into the record. So I, Linda Bacon, will vote yes. Counselor Israel Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Kevin Jourdain?
Yes,
Counselor Jose Maldonado Velez?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just double checking to make sure Counselor Givner didn't arrive. So that will advance to City Council with a recommendation of 4-0 from this committee. And thank you for your time and investment in our city. And I think that's very
you.
creative about the art part
Oh,
that you were
thank
talking
you.
about. Yeah,
And thank you for the votes.
okay,
Thank you very much.
Good
Have
luck.
a good night.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to get item 8 out of order.
Counselor, I would take it, except that I was advised by our administrative assistant that planning has continued their hearing and they do not have a recommendation for us yet. I was hoping
Okay.
I was hoping we would get one tonight,
Okay.
okay? Now, if we're going in order, I'm just not seeing anybody from personnel here, and we do have folks from DPW. So I'd like to,
Kelly,
I'm sorry, I
Kelly
take
is
that
here.
back. I see Kelly Curran, so I won't
Motion to
bump you,
take up item
Kelly.
3.
And, yes, is there a second? All in favor? Aye. So item 3 is ordered that the City of Holyoke develop a personnel policy for the handling of administrative leave and codifying the rules into ordinance as recommended by the Personnel Department, including but not limited to when employees should or should not be placed on paid leave or unpaid leave. The current process appears lacking objective standards. Taxpayers should also be protected to ensure people who should not be out on paid administrative leave are placed on unpaid administrative leave. This was filed by Councilor JOURDAIN. Councilor JOURDAIN, do you wish to address this? Or would you like to hear from Kelly Curran?
I will like to hear from Kelly, I always like to hear from Kelly Curran. But by way of just teeing this up a little bit and laying the foundation, I would just say that what I'm looking for is to make sure that in Holyoke, as we're looking at all of the various rules that exist, that we're making sure that there's a level of, to the extent possible, reasonability between the different employee categories, that we have a level of harmony, and that we have some thoughtfulness put to how we're approaching these situations. In particular, where we have situations that people are put under charges or different things like this, you know, is there a policy or how are we handling that? And I want to learn more. I do have one piece of information I did want to ask about and share, but I did want to just make sure that to the extent we have a coherent, sort of well thought out policy to determine who's on unpaid leave, who's on paid leave, and I understand and appreciate these are very sensitive matters, and I want to be very respectful to the people's presumptions of innocence. That's very important to me. But on the other hand, I also want to make sure that we have a coherent policy so that if anybody says, well, this one's on unpaid leave and this one's on paid leave, there was a degree of fairness and uniformity amongst all of these things. So I, in advance, want to say thank you to Kelly for doing some of the preparatory research in terms of looking at our various collective bargaining agreements and ordinances on this, and I found that particularly helpful. At the appropriate time, I also want to ask a question about how certain state laws apply here in Holyoke, and if that's been given some consideration. So I want to talk about that when the time is right. But happy to hear from Kelly on what information she's already gathered to us, which so far appears extensive. So I'd like to listen to Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you. So Kelly, you have the floor. I know that we received an attachment from you, but if you don't mind just sort of running down it in summary, that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Councilor JOURDAIN and Councilor Bacon. So I did share some of the verbiage that's in different bargaining units. Not all, most of them don't have language about paid or unpaid leave, but they do have language about suspensions or discipline. So I shared that just for, so you can have an idea of how each union differs from the other. Most of them are similar with steps of progressive discipline, but when there's an instance where someone has to be put on leave pending an investigation, that's not really laid out in the collective bargaining agreements. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what each of them said. I did reach out to Chief Pratt and Chief Kadalevitz because they probably have the most instances of having to put people on admin leave. And so they did share how they handle it, which is pretty uniform. If someone's charged with a felony, they would be placed on unpaid leave. If someone's charged with a misdemeanor crime, it would be paid leave until investigation. And then if someone's, it depends on the severity of the if it's not like a crime, but it's an investigation in the department, it depends on the severity of the potential offense, whether they're put on light duty or paid leave. So I feel like it's just situational, and it's hard to create a template of how to handle situations that potentially have to put someone on paid or unpaid leave, because if someone's accused of something, let's say sexual harassment or any kind of harassment, they still are owed the due diligence of an investigation. So if they're wrongfully accused and we don't pay them, that creates another hardship. So, you know, while we're investigating the situation, they're already going through a hardship, as a potential victim would be too, but then to not pay them would create another hardship. And you know, we value our employees and we want to assume everyone is working with integrity and doing the right thing. And we want to be able to make sure before not paying someone, that they are found guilty. So I did include what our labor attorney, his opinion, and he said, in my opinion, a policy regarding paid administrative leave is not advisable. There are too many variables that come into play when making this type of determination. I also did send out an email to my Mass Municipal Association listserv and asked if any of them had policies. And they said for the most part, they follow their collective bargaining agreements and don't have a policy because, again, they want to make sure somebody is guilty before not paying them. But I do want to say that Mayor Garcia and I think not that previous administration didn't pay attention, but I think we have our hand on the pulse more than previous administration did. And I think there's a lot of transparency with department heads and the mayor and I. So we know a little bit more about what's going on. We can, you know, try to help make decisions faster and support in investigations so that people are not getting paid for years if they're under investigation. But criminal charges, we have no, you know, we have to let the courts decide that, which there hasn't been many.
Thank you. I just want to note that Councilor McGivern has joined us in the chambers. Councilor Jourdain.
Kelly, again, want to thank you for your work on it.
You are difficult to hear, Councilor.
How about now? Is that better? Is that better now, Madam Chair?
A little. You're just sort of echoing, but give it a try.
But, I wanted to thank Kelly for her work. One thing that I didn't notice was a review of maybe some related state laws that might be involved. And I wanted to point out, in preparing to do this order that I had looked at, I had the opportunity to review one particular state law that I'd like you to take a look at, maybe with the help of the law department. And that's chapter 268A, section 25. And I would be interested to see how that affects your thoughts on this conversation. Because in looking at that ordinance, I wonder if I could share my screen to take a look and put that up on the board. Is that possible, Madam Chair?
Jeffrey, can you allow that sharing, please?
Councilor Jourdain, while he's checking, did you say 268A, section 25?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I have it written down.
You should be all set, Councilor Jourdain.
Okay, so in looking at this statute, and again, I don't pretend to be an expert on this, but this seems to be addressing, and again, I think the question that the law department maybe could look at and help us with is what's considered quote unquote misconduct while in office. But here's a go at it for me reading this. So it says, any officer or employee of a county, city, town, or district, howsoever formed, including but not limited to regional school districts, regional planning districts, or any department, board, commission, agency thereof may, during any period such officer or employee is under indictment for misconduct in such office or employment, or for misconduct in any elected or appointed public office, trust, or employment at any time held by him, be suspended by the appointing authority, whether or not such appointment was subject to approval in any manner. And then it goes on to talk about how this person is notified of this. These are some mechanical relative to notice. It then goes on to discuss how person shall automatically suspend the authority of such person to perform the duties of his office or employment until removed. Then it talks about copy with the clerk, and it goes on in how in different jurisdictions who's notified. But then I'd like to take a look at the top of this second paragraph, which I found interesting. Any person so suspended shall not receive any compensation or salary during the period of suspension, nor shall the period of his suspension be counted in the computing of sick leave or vacation benefits or seniority rights. And then it just kind of goes on to a bunch of other things that are sort of taken away from them while they're under the period of suspension. It's not a really long statute, but I was hoping that at some point your office and the law department could take a look at this section of law and see if it has any bearing on who gets paid and unpaid leave. You know, for example, is it a situation where someone's under charges? Is that considered, quote unquote, the same as an indictment? You know, maybe if you're up on charges, you know, there's different ways to be charged with a crime. So I just want to point this out, bring this statute to your attention, and see if there's applicability here relative to this issue, and gives us any guidance, and just kind of factor that into the algebra a little bit. So I wanted to pass this along, and then if you could take a look at it and then let me know. And then it kind of goes on to say, you know, an important part, if the criminal proceedings against the person suspended are terminated without a finding or a verdict of guilty on which this person was indicted, his suspension shall be removed, and he shall receive all compensation or salary due him for the period of suspension. And then it kind of goes back to, you know, they get credit for all of that time. And so some of the things that have been raised to me by some citizens has been, you know, if people are out on some of these charges, is it that they're suspended, you know, and then, okay, we give them the money back, which, you know, that's what they would be entitled to if they're found not guilty, right? Or some they drop the charges. But if we have a situation now where the person is charged and they're collecting the pay, is this a situation where, you know, particularly if it's related to their office, you know, and again, I think the question is, how narrow is this statute? And again, I'm not drawing any conclusions, I'm just asking you to take a look at it, is if it's in connection in particular with misconduct while in office, particular to your job in particular. You know, I've heard certain things in the newspaper, is that a situation where now if the person is ultimately found guilty, then maybe the citizens are out hundreds of thousands of dollars because that took 2 years, 3 years, who knows how long to prosecute that situation before a determination is made, and maybe the person is ultimately found guilty. So now the city's out all that money that maybe they wouldn't be otherwise. So again, I'd just like you to take a look at. I'd really appreciate your opinion. I'd be interested in the law department's opinion on it, and consider that in the mix. So I wanted to just bring it to your attention.
Thank you, Councilor. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. Thank you for sharing it. It would only, like, it would only be applicable to the Schedule A, and I feel like Schedule A are employees at will anyway, so the time that I've been here, we haven't had to deal with any misconduct from a Schedule A employee, thankfully. But all the other unions, we would have to negotiate adding this or adding something to their contracts.
Right. One of the things I would say is this is a state law. I'm not sure it does just apply to the Schedule A employees. I'm not sure a collective bargaining agreement waives a state law. I mean, that would be a question to be looked at. I'm not saying it is or is not. I think it would need further research, but I would say this 268A is the ethics law. And the question, to my knowledge, is if you're a firefighter or DPW worker, or police officer or teacher, to my knowledge, you have to follow all the other state ethics laws. I don't see an exemption here that says anything about if you're a city employee that's a member of a collective bargaining agreement. This seems to suggest it's all city employees that this would apply to. But again, please just take a look at that and research that question for us and let us know.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the committee? I just can't necessarily see your hands. I don't want to miss anybody that have any questions or comments. Okay, not hearing any, not seeing any in the chambers. I'd like to entertain a motion to table so that legal can take a look at any ramifications and then get back to us, maybe in October. Does that sound reasonable, Kelly?
Yeah, I think that's definitely enough time.
Okay, all right. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Motion to table item 3.
Oh,
Okay.
welcome, Counselor Givner. She has joined us. We now have a full committee. Okay, so we have a motion to table this for legal to get back to us, and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can we go out of order for our DPW folks who are in the chambers? And I'd like to entertain a motion to take up item 11.
Motion to take up item 11.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Item 11, filed by Councilor Jourdain, Councilor McGivern, and Councilors McGee, ordered that the Ordinance Committee invite in the Mayor and DPW Superintendent to review Chapter 74 of our ordinances on solid waste and how this reconciles with the proposed rollout of a new residential trash pickup program in light of our already existing laws in this area. It is requested that they review their proposal with us so we and citizens can understand it better. So welcome, Carl. Welcome, Libby. Oh, either way is fine if you want to roll it in. It's very hard for many of us to envision gallons in a bin. So just to, we have the makers of the order here, Councilor Jourdain and Councilor McGivern. I just wanted to frame it a little that a number of us have received calls from folks about managing it, storing it. Can I have it also? How will this all work practically? Yeah. But I'll let the makers of the order flesh it out if they wish. Councilor Counselor
Kevin got his
Jourdain?
hand up?
Pardon?
Kevin got his hand up?
He does.
He started, we're together, but why don't you let him go first?
Okay. Counselor Jourdain?
And then, yes, Linda, when you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to the DPW team, to Libby and to Carl for coming down on this issue. I really appreciate it. I obviously heard through some of your public announcements relative to the new trash program, and one of the things that came to mind was just a couple, obviously constituents have questions, but the first thing I wanted to address was the fact that, you know, it appears that we, and I believe we've had for quite some time, at least since 2011, on the last rewrite of the solid waste ordinance, we have two sections of law. One says that trash barrels will be 35 gallons, and you're allowed to have up to 12 of them per week. So without further approval of the DPW superintendent. And when I saw the policy rolled out that it's going to be, everybody is going to get this 96-gallon barrel, and you have only this barrel, and you must use this barrel or your trash won't be picked up, I felt we were in a bit of a situation of cart in front of the horse. And I know everybody's well-intentioned in advancing some of this, but I did want to just make sure that the city council is part of this conversation as representatives of the people, that, you know, we have established rules on all of these things. And if there's going to be a new policy developed, that needs to be brought before the city council in order to be legally enforceable. So there was those process concern. And if there is going to be the 196-gallon policy and you would like the council to approve that, you know, obviously we want to have conversation with you about, you know, why the new policy, you know, get the background on all of this so that we can answer these questions for constituents. And I will say, you know, I'm interested as to, you know, why the policy. I understand that ARPA money was used to pay for the barrels. I'm interested to learn how much that all cost, if you could let us know when the time is right here. But there are a number of residents who have approached me relatives of some of their concerns. One is, you know, obviously the storage of the barrel. Some people who do not have driveways, they don't have garages as to where they would store this big barrel. Like, for example, a lot of them use smaller barrels, or they use a bag today. For example, if you live in a Philadelphia cottage, you know, you would have to conceivably lug this giant barrel up and down your stairs to get it out to the street, or it's going to sit there for the whole week. You know, that's concerning to people that live in that kind of a situation. People with disabilities with such a big barrel versus a smaller barrel. So it's a lot of those type of questions. There's questions about, well, gee, what if I have more trash than goes in one barrel? I'd like to purchase a second barrel, but preliminarily we've heard you can't buy a second barrel. So there's a lot of questions around that, but at the beginning, I'd like to kind of address, there is a process, and talking about the current rules and making sure the DPW, if you are gonna send out these barrels later this month, and I believe that's your intent, and that's what the mailing said, that we're not gonna enforce that as mandatory. We can have people use those, but if they still use the old barrels, it's not enforceable that they can't use the old barrel system until we change the ordinance that says they can't do that. So, you know, like I said, we do have rules on that stuff. So I'll stop there, and I do thank the DPW to give us the background, and look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Chair Bacon. Kevin had filed the order first. I was about to file mine when I noticed it on the agenda and asked him to co-sign, so we didn't have multiple orders here. But I don't think just Kevin and I, but we're all receiving these emails, and a lot of them, and a lot of concerns, a lot of questions. I think the residents, that I've spoken to understand that the issues are important, that it's expensive to, the tipping fees at the landfill, the pickup of trash is very expensive, and don't take it for granted. At the same time, and I think, I don't want to blame ARPA, ARPA's been a great tool, but when Terry Murphy was our acting mayor, I believe is when the monies for ARPA was allocated to buy these trucks and to buy these bins. Not one city councilor knew that. We're going to evolve into a whole different program of pickup that would be very very big changes in the lives of our residents. And I think that's what we like to become part of the discussion. Two is, and Kevin said it exactly right, is we've had these discussions before. The ordinance is there because nothing can be enforced without a city ordinance. No police officer, no board of health without a code, no board of health agent, no DPW agent can issue a ticket or do anything. You couldn't even refuse to pick up trash, just because someone didn't use this bin without an ordinance saying this is the way it's done in Holyoke. We went to the 35-gallon because we had many DPW workers were being injured, and we wanted our residents not to use those bigger cans, which are obviously heavier to lift, and to help protect our workers. And that's another reason why we have an ordinance. But like Kevin said, there are many, and we're only just, I've got a few calls from Southampton Road where, they're not even noticeable, but homes are up a hill. And they literally put their trash in the trunk of their car and bring it down and put it in, barrels. They don't know how they're going to get this up and down their monstrous driveways, but that's just, some examples besides the Philadelphia cottages. When I grew up, and Carl, I don't know if you would appreciate this, Libby might a little bit, but the alleyways is where trash was picked up, and literally had a grader. The trash truck would back down behind the grader. Two workers would be in front of the grader, and you would just walk out, throw your trash in the middle of the alleyway, and they would just scoop it into the grader. It would go up the ladder, dump it into the truck till the truck was full. The workers the alleyway would be spotless the day of trash because they would just get everything. And when you had to switch trucks, they would make sure everything that didn't make it into the grader got taken care of. I won't go into the garbage story because that was a whole different way of life then. But it was something that I think, and the reason I tell that story is we are a unique city. We're small and large at the same time. And one of the things that people who live here appreciate, and I don't think they take it for granted, is trash pickup. And you look around at other communities that are charging by the bag, other communities that, have landfills and you have to bring it yourself to the landfill. We have a very special service that we offer residents of Holyoke for the taxes that they pay. That and bulk, the option of bulk drop-off at the garage is an incredible option that not all communities offer in the way that we do. City councilors, commissioners, Carl, I think you now know how expensive that gets. And I'm looking forward to hearing how we can better things for the budget point of view, but also at the same time continue to offer that service. And one of the things, besides what I talked about, but also what that Kevin hit was, to many households, this barrel, I just can tell just by looking, is enough on a weekly pickup. To some households, an option of a second barrel is going to be very important. Family size differs. Jenny and I pride ourselves, as being good recyclers. And I think that cuts down on what goes into the tipping fee for the trash removal itself. And I think we have to, as we go into this, and I haven't seen it for a while, get back to the enforcement of recycling, because not everybody recycles. And that you can just drive around on trash day, and when you don't see a blue bin, you know that there's a household not recycling. that means their bag of trash is full of recyclables. And that's something that we have to do a better job of enforcing. And I think there's a number of things that we can do. And then together, whatever the next phase is, we can work on an education process to show not just what the change is, but why we're changing. And that's, I appreciate the efforts, and I understand it's important. And I appreciate you being here tonight to help us so we can better answer our constituents' questions and hopefully come to some level ground where we can compromise an ordinance that makes sense to everybody.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Okay, Councilor JOURDAIN was correct. I guess this proposal has been in place since, when I took a look at the paperwork, since October 26, 2021. So we've had trash studies here before I started here last fall of 22. Linda Pratt was on it. Even before I came on board, I was part of that because I knew I was taking a job in Holyoke. So I was part of the study program, and this was discussed at our study program. Just to give you a little bit of history about myself in this program, because like I said, I kind of inherited this, and I ran with it as soon as I came. We had the garbage study, which was finally approved, I would say, in April, that we presented here in council chambers as part of a Public Works Commission meeting, and invited council to that, which we talked about the trash rollout, that we're going to purchase these 96-gallon cans. I apologize for the fact that, the ordinances, and we're trying to catch up on the ordinances, but what I'd like to say is that right now, if we follow the ordinances, and I think I've sent pictures, I sent it to Jeffrey.
We did get
we
some
would
this
not pick
afternoon.
up garbage at all in the city, or we'd just be sending violations all the time. One of the reasons why these programs in place is, this is a large garbage can. It is. I have a family back in Jersey of 8, and we would not fill one of these garbage cans in a week. I think one of the reasons why they came up with the formula was a maximum of 12. But I think when I'm talking to my staff, the maximum was 12 was for a 4-family apartment unit. So it was broken down into, divide by, 12 by 4, that's three 35-gallon cans, close to a 96-gallon can for each family. So this is, I believe this is more than enough for a single-family residence for a weekly pickup. And also to promote, like you said, recycling. Recycling was a big deal. The study is available to you. I could send it out to you by email. I'll send it to Jeffrey so he could disperse it to the committee members. But this was one of the processes as part of the study, going into recycling, going back to dual stream. And we feel that having people use one can and one can only will promote recycling. It's shown that in other places that I worked with. If we did that, it's fine. To purchase another can, it's more than enough. I believe it's more than enough for a family of 6, family of 7. Like I said, I have my mother, my mother-in-law, my 4 kids, me and my wife, and we never filled up one of these cans in a week. So one of the problem things is that we wanted to make Holyoke cleaner, and issuing city-issued cans, they're still the property of the city, but they're assigned to the property. Not to the property owner. They can't take it with them when they move out of the city. That's assigned to the property. We have methods in place for people with disabilities. We could get them a smaller can, but for the rollout, we just wanted to do a 96-gallon can. And then, when as people ask us for a smaller can, 64-gallon can is a little smaller than this, narrower, a little shorter. 35-gallon can is very small. We can go to that for the seniors once we get, yeah.
That's important, I think.
Yeah, but we will take that into account. We just want to roll this out, ask people to try it for 60 days, and then give us a call, and we will see what we can do to change it. We did order about 100 of the 64-gallon cans for the public, to try out if they don't like the 96-gallon cans. So this whole program also benefits the city because we retrofitted our garbage trucks with rear tippers. So these will be rolled out to the truck, the garbage truck. A mechanism hooks onto them, and they tip them in. So it'll help
So
with
no picking up.
Nobody has to pick any garbage up. And one of the big reasons why we tell people that they have to be bagged and in the garbage cans. Just a couple of weeks ago, one of my workers got jabbed with a hypodermic needle. So it's a safety concern for my workers. So that's one of the things that we look at. And also, like I said, it keeps it clean. No pests go into the garbage bags. It's a secured lid, watertight, and it's, if people give it a chance, you'll see that it will work. These trash carts are sturdier than what you'll get in Home Depot. It's not going to be tossed around. It's going to be rolled back. We're going to be training the workers on how to do that for the rollout. And even though we said that, we understand that the ordinance has to be updated for these garbage cans. We're still going to pick up the garbage cans until the ordinance is in place. But we want people to start getting used to this. I mean, sometimes it's common sense. We understand. But the problem is that we haven't had a recycling coordinator for almost a year.
Right.
The one that we did have only lasted a short time because it wasn't a good fit for him. So to do the enforcement also at the same time is going to be tricky. We're looking to hire a new coordinator. Within a couple of weeks, we have a candidate. So those are a few things that that we're thinking about. Just to let you know, in the future, we're also going to be issuing recycling bins like this. The plan that I have is that I'm working with Yoni in conservation. We're looking also to get 2 electric garbage trucks with the one-armed garbage truck, so we could utilize that, which also saves on staff, and we could use that staff in other areas. As you know, that I'm always saying at every meeting that I'm up with whatever committee I'm at, I need manpower, I need equipment. It's hard to find manpower, but at least whatever I have now, I can move them over into the other departments. So, I mean, any other questions that I forgot or anything like that? Like I said, going forward, I'll be more aware of the fact that the council was never maybe part of this conversation before my arrival, and I do want to, I don't want to say educate, but inform the council of what's going on, because I think this is a very important program for the city. I do believe that I strongly believe that it'll keep the town cleaner. I believe that when we went on a tour for a sewer plant out in what is it, Deer Island. You saw them all lined up neatly on the streets. The streets are nice and clean, no bags anywhere. And one of the other reasons why we went for this is because we don't want to charge residents extra for the bagging like they do in other communities. Like you have to buy a roll of bags at a Stop and Shop, and so we're trying to stay away from pay as you throw model.
So I just have a couple of questions, and I'll recognize you, Counselor Givner, as soon as I ask a couple questions. So how will it work with yard waste for the people who do their own yard work and have separate barrels for that?
Okay, they can still use their barrels for yard waste.
Okay, the same as ever.
So what I said in the flyer that's going out, there's going to be 2 flyers that's going to go out with this trash can.
Okay.
It's actually hooked into the can, so when they open the can, they'll see the flyers. One is on dual stream recycling, because it's important that we go back to that, because it'll save the city a lot of money going back to dual stream. It's be both in English and in Spanish, and also in the other pamphlets, it's like FAQs.
Okay.
And you could always call DPW. We've been receiving calls about that. Okay. And we would tell people, don't throw out your old cans, use them for yard waste.
Right. Okay,
Use them for yard
perfect.
waste.
Perfect. Counselor Givner.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think Councilor Rivera's had his hand up for long before I did, so I'm fine if you'd like to recognize him.
Okay, Counselor Rivera.
Thank you. The DPW head for this presentation that you just put forth. I think some of this has kind of come somewhat of a surprise to some of us, but I don't want to say it's not a surprise. It's just that it's a change, right? And because it's a change, it makes things like when it's really happening and it's actually happening, now it's like, oh, wow, it's happening, right? So now we have people that are happy about it, and then we have people that are not really welcoming a change, right? Or at the end of the day, don't see the benefits in the change. I agree that the policy should have been changed first. That I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think anything should be enforced if the policy is not changed yet. But I think for me, as a counselor, trying to support what DPW is trying to put forth and what the board, the commission is trying to put forth, is important. I hear some of the constituents that have reached out to me as well about their concerns about how big the barrels are, but I've also heard a lot of positive feedback with regards to the direction we're trying to move in to deal with our trash, right? I think, for me personally, I think it'd have been better if we did with recycling first, left trash the way it was, but I'm not the head of DPW, I'm not on the commission, I don't have that direct say-so with regards to that. But for me, I guess, it's good that we're moving in this direction, right? I think we might need to take some considerations with regards to how this will impact some of the residents, especially some of the ones that are physically challenged, right? If they're in a wheelchair, how are they going to be able to roll this out, right? If they're elderly and it's a very heavy barrel, are we able to give them a smaller one? That makes sense. But I think that as a community to move forward, we need to stick with something and move with it. Doubling down on certain things, right, is not going to send a consistent message to the community on what we're trying to move forward with regards to trash. Driving down Brown Ave, I live on Willow Street, sometimes it's ridiculous how many trash bags you see on the side of the road. And with these barrels, I feel like it's going to help with that overall trash that you're going to see inside of the road. So I appreciate the initiative. And there was also, I think, a group working with PVPA or PVPC.
That's that's the group that did
that
the study.
I myself and I think Councilor Bartley sat on throughout the process. And I mean, we weren't able to be present during all of the meetings because some of the meetings were during the same time we had meetings. But at the end of the day, we attended some of them. I was aware, I didn't know the barrels were going to be so big, but I was aware that this was in the pipeline. I think that, again, for us to move forward as a community, we need to try to explore different avenues and new things so that way we're not always trying to, how do you say it, raise the tax budget overall to make sure that we're covering ends meet on certain services that we're providing with DPW. If certain people need to throw away a lot more trash, I mean, that's a privilege, in my opinion, right? There's a certain amount of trash that we output, but there's a certain amount of recycling that you can do. And when you're doing recycling, that'll limit your trash. Your trash will shrink dramatically. And if we ever get to food waste, however you do that, that'll even shrink trash dramatically even more. So for me, I guess I'm in favor of this, but like some of the things that were brought up by Councilor JOURDAIN and Councilor McGivern, I do agree with policy and maybe being concerned with some of the elderly residents and the ones that are living in certain places. I don't have a driveway, but I still figure it out. But I'm younger. When I get to an older age or something like that, it might be more difficult for me. But at the end of the day, I totally hear the concern too. And thank you for recognizing me.
Can I
Counselor Givner.
respond? Just to-
Oh, sure. Counselor Givner, Carl just wants to respond to.
Councilor Rivera, thank you. Just let you know that this was this is not the steps that I would have taken. This, like I said, this plan was in place already, but when I came in, the steps that I would have taken would have been a little differently. Because in the rollout that I've done in another community, we did it by wards. You know, we did a difficult ward and an easy ward. It was a 4-ward city, so we did it 1 and 3 at one time. One was an easier, one was a harder one, but we did it at one time, and we did everything. We did garbage, recycling, bought the new one-armed garbage trucks all at the same time so we could do the rollout. This we had to do a little differently because the ARPA money that was allocated for it was for the garbage cans, and it was $525,000. And because it took so long for us to get it, actually the price of plastics went up, obviously, because of oil. So it went from 525, I believe the final contract from ARPA is like 650. So I just wanted to add that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Givner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Carl Rossi, for coming in. It's really appreciated to hear about the process. I actually wasn't surprised by this. I do recall some meetings earlier in the year. I think definitely this is an issue on the council side as I see it, as we did not take note and really prepare for this, because this is something I think we could have taken care of while the conversations were happening about rolling out the 96-gallon trash carts. And as far as constituent concerns, I haven't received any really negative feedback from residents. I've mostly received positive feedback from residents, and I think for any of our neighbors who do have disabilities or have difficulty with the larger carts, it does seem like there is a plan in place for that, which is excellent. And also, these are the same people who are probably having similar problems now. So I think, you know, as a city, we'll be working together as we usually do to figure these things out. And as far as our ordinance, our current trash ordinance, it's not enforced now. So I feel like it's in our best interest to adopt these larger trash cans, rolling out a new policy that really underscores the need to put trash bags in barrels. Because I know it's not unique to my block, but the piles of trash bags that I see on the curb that get picked up while someone with a trash bin that's 5 gallons over does not get emptied, I think is ridiculous. So this is, again, one of the things where we have plenty of ordinances, we have plenty of rules, but if they're not enforced, it doesn't really matter. So I commend the efforts of our new director, and I look forward to these rolling out and working with my neighbors to make sure everybody's happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Puello.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And so I'm going to be a little bit more critical than I think what I've heard tonight about this policy and how everything's been handled. And I did get a lot of emails about this, and I know Carl knows, because as soon as I heard about the change, I think I found out on Facebook, and then I started getting emails just like everyone else did. And I told Carl about it. I said, Carl, I mean, what's going on with this? You know, what's this new change? And, you know, I'm going to be honest, I don't think anybody knew about the ordinance from the beginning, because when I went on Facebook, I think the mayor was saying, he's telling people to throw their bins away, and he's telling people to, you know, label them, and they're going to get picked up, and they're going to go in the garbage. So I don't think anybody knew about the ordinance, and I think that's a big deal. I mean, where was the law department? You know, I love Terry Murphy, and it kind of sounds like we're kind of trying to say, oh, well, Terry had everything to do with this, but I mean, this has been going on for 2 years. This was in the works. So it's like, did nobody know? Did we spend all this money and nobody knew about the ordinance? So I kind of think that's a big deal. And if I heard correctly, I heard from Carl that, I mean, we're just going to be trying this for 60 days. And, you know, I'm relieved to hear that, because I've been telling constituents, I mean, I'll tell you guys straight up, I told constituents, I mean, you don't have to do that. Here's the ordinance. And so I hope that the mayor or somebody goes back on Facebook like we did the first time, just to let everybody know that they don't need to throw their bins away. I mean, imagine all the waste that 40,000 residents are going to create by throwing away their bins. So I hope somebody lets people know that they don't have to throw them out, because that's what people were being told. And so I think I heard 650,000 for for the bins. I mean, I'm just curious, like how are we, if we want to charge $90 per bin, I mean, how much does that equate to? Like, what's 60, like, for $650,000, how many bins did we get? And I mean, how much are we paying per bin? Because if we're trying to like make a ton of money off of residents, I don't think that's okay, $90 per bin. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm not too supportive of this. I just don't really like it. I think we already have an ordinance. I think the city of Holyoke has a lot of problems, and I don't think that this is one that, trying to tell people that they can't have their garbage bins, like, okay. And one of the main things too that I see with this, just my last point, one of the main problems that I see with this, and I'm really concerned about it too, is in the future moving to trash fees. Okay, that's no secret. The mayor was campaigning on that. So, I mean, are we planning on doing some kind of trash fees in the future? If there's going to be any kind of vote on changing ordinances or anything like that, I hope people are willing to come on the record and say, I promise that this isn't going to lead to trash fees at a later date. But just to get my 2 cents, I mean, I really don't support too many changes to this, and, we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to answer that. As far as, like I said, in the flyers, there's FAQs. If residents wants to throw their trash cans away, which are, some of them are old, which need to be, if you saw the pictures, you see they're damaged, you should just write trash on it, or throw out. But that's in the flyer, and we actually encourage in the flyer that we send for them to repurpose it either for recycling or for yard waste. As far as the cost per trash can, it's about $65 per trash can. That's because we bought it in bulk. If we were to buy it as we're replacing it or anything like that, it's going to cost us about $90. And don't forget the storage that we have to store it down at DPW too. So that's where the extra fee is for charging $90. And like I said, a trash can like this is very sturdier than what you would get what you would get at a Home Depot. As far as, like I said, I'm not blaming anybody prior to me. I'm just saying that this is, there was a program in place about 2 years ago to try to get this going, and I try to do the best that I can to move this program along. And as far as the ordinances go, like I said, I apologize for that. Maybe I should have, being new on board, I should have made more of an outreach to council, but I was under the impression that since I had the proposal in front of me and had the ARPA money in front of me, that, the council didn't know about this.
It's reasonable. I just want to make one request. And you've talked about the recycling, and we all acknowledge that it sort of fell off for over a year. So I'm just hoping as we are resuming it, and many of us just continued to do it even though we became aware it was just getting dumped in the trash, which was a little, disappointing. But as we're going back into enforcing it and reestablishing it, can we have sort of a grace period for the people who got a little aggravated and then said, hey, if they're going to all throw it in the trash together, I am too, right? Yeah. So just to say, look, we're back doing it the right way. I don't know, some kind of a grace period.
Yeah, I mean,
before we're, ticketing or whatever people, just so it's a smooth re-entry.
The plan is not to ticket people. We don't want to ticket people. We want to educate people on what to do properly. Okay. I don't think people do put some recycling in the trash, but our problem is that, as you know, because of COVID and labor constraints that we've had, that we went to the single stream, unbeknownst to council knowing, and with another violation of ordinance. Right.
But I'm a fan, trust me, I want us to do it.
No, but we're going back to that. We're going back to it correctly.
Yeah.
But we're not going to just put a violation on people's doors and say they got to pay a ticket. Yeah. The whole plan is, once we get the recycling court on board, to tag the bins and say, okay, this is what you're doing incorrectly.
Yeah.
Maybe to put a door hanger on their door and say, this is what you need to do. Mm-hmm. That's part of the flyers that's going out with the trash cans regarding the recycling. Yeah. Nobody wants to be ticketed. And trust me, I don't want to ticket nobody. Right. I don't want my staff to go into court and be in court and wasting their time in court.
Right.
or have aggravated residents.
Right, because I think most people are in favor of it, but it's easy to get in bad habits, as we know, right? All right, well, thank you. Counselor Jourdain.
Yeah, again, I think everybody's coming from a perspective of, you know, we all want the best thing here. And Carl, I appreciate you're the new guy and you're inheriting what you think was here and you're just trying to carry the ball forward. I will say, in terms of the cost of all of this, $650,000, the first point I'll make is ARPA money is effectively city money, in that that's money that if we didn't spend it on trash barrels, that we could have spent it on something else that the city needs, you know, like other capital improvements. In terms of, but I'm assuming that that decision was made before my arrival, so I don't know if the council was aware that this was the plan, that they were going to buy 10,000 $65 barrels for $650,000. I'd be interested to hear from maybe a Counselor Bacon or a Counselor McGivern, because that's the impression I'm being left with here, that those decisions were made in a prior round of ARPA. I myself was not aware of this whole policy change until I saw it on social media myself. And I do tend to follow city government pretty closely here. I will say some of the things that Carl is saying is absolutely music to my ears, such as going back to dual stream recycling. That's fantastic. I really appreciate you, Carl, getting that ship righted. We should have never left dual stream. And by the way, as you correctly stated, that was done in violation of the ordinances, undisclosed, as I understand it. The other thing is, and I kind of figured this was, and it's a great thing, which is to have the an arm to pick up the barrels to reduce the back strain and otherwise on the workers, which is great because, you know, whatever we can do to eliminate workplace injuries is super important to the city. You know, I like that aspect to it. What I'm only suggesting, and I think as you stated, Carl, in terms of the rollout, if we were going to do a program, I think before we ran off and bought 10,000 barrels, that we would have maybe bought 1,000 barrels and did a pilot to see, does this work? Do people like it? Are you happy? Do a 60-day trial and see if that made sense, or, because I don't know about other counselors, but I've never had constituents call me up and say, you know, I really don't like using my 35-gallon barrel, and I really wish the city would, you know, create a one-barrel system and do this. I've never had anybody call me up and ask me to change. Like this, if I said, what are the top 10 issues facing the city, how their trash is picked up, I didn't see that on anybody's list in terms of constituents. So I'm just wondering how, of all the many issues and problems we have, $650,000 is sort of percolated up to the top of the list. But again, I'll let some of the counselors that were here in the last term speak to that if you had that conversation. And I don't know, was there a survey sent out to residents that they wanted to do this? I don't recall myself getting something like that in the mail to see if I would be interested or if other people would be interested in something like this. Again, I think as people are coming into the understanding of how we have these rules, is these are the type of conversations. I'm glad to have filed this order, and I'm glad I did, and I'm glad a number of people co-sponsored it with me, but it really shouldn't be on me to have to file an order to have this conversation about the rollout of the trash program. This should be coming from the DPW, filing something with the city council saying, you know, we'd like to do X, Y, and Z, and here's our plan, you know, the ARPA money was approved, and here's all the things we'd like to do, and then we could start saying, well, you know, maybe we should do it this way or that way, and this and that. So I know we're playing a little catch up. I think everyone's heart is in the right place, and I really appreciate the hard work Carl's doing. But as we move forward, I definitely like the idea of we're letting sort of have a side-by-side system where people are encouraged to use the new barrels, see how it goes, right? If these have already been purchased, then it's water over the dam per se. But I like the idea that please have on standby for citizens, if they have that option, if I'm a senior, to get a 30 or disabled, to get a 35-gallon barrel, or perhaps the 64-gallon barrel. I just don't want to have a totally regimented cookie cutter, you know, that we should push people to the standardized system. Definitely, if that's where we're going to decide to do as we think about this. But we need to have some flexibility because we all don't have the same living situation, right? Some people are seniors, some people have steep stairs and they have no place to put, you know, this or lawn driveway. You know, we have to consider those individuals. So it sounds like, Carl, you're already taking that into consideration, and I appreciate that as we move forward. So I'm really interested to see what the public's reaction is, and you know, hopefully it all works out great. I mean, I appreciate the initiative to do things in a better way, in a smarter way, and I'd be interested to see if there's been any study in any other community. Maybe you could forward to the council some information of people who have gone from a Holyoke type system to somebody who's gone to a 96-gallon system, and you know, what did it look like 5 years later or 3 years later? You know, and it came back, you know, 92% of the residents were happy and there were no issues, and you know, everything was fine. So I would just like to see what kind of due diligence was done on that piece of it, and I think that might be helpful to us. So I do appreciate, again, I think the biggest thing is education and building in flexibility. And you know what? There might be some that do, you know, legitimately have, if there's a conversation on a household, you know, maybe there is certain circumstances where a second barrel is warranted, but maybe we have some sort of approval process to get a second barrel. Again, building these type of flexibilities into the program, I think, makes a lot of sense. So, thank you.
Yes, Libby.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add that I know that Councilor Jourdain mentioned if any of the councilors remember when this was presented. And I do remember because that's when acting Mayor Terry Murphy.
Right.
These funds were allocated, so it really shouldn't have been a surprise, like, to the community or to the city council. And in all fairness to Carl, he came aboard and this was already implemented and ready to roll. So I should have probably, and I thought that this wasn't a surprise, so I really didn't look at the ordinance. And now I understand, you know, that this violates, you know, well, the gallon size. But like Carl said, if we really were gonna stick by the ordinance, then right now we have the way that our city has been disposing, especially like in my ward, Ward 4, we have a lot of people that bring their bags to the front, just in bags, they deposit their garbage there. We have people picking at that garbage before DPW gets there. So there's like a tremendous amount of waste just flying all over our city. We have enough trash to deal with. And I think that this is I'm excited about this, you know. We have this great bin and it has the cover. And I know that there was some discussion on the social media platforms about if the can gets stolen, but it doesn't, you know, I mean, the recycle bins don't get stolen, and we have some that are already like this, And I think that this is really going to curb the litter flying all over the place, and it's going to beautify our city moving forward. But I do agree that there's going to be some barriers for some people, and I'm sure that they're having barriers now because if they're like not body able to
Right.
bring, you know, I'm sure that there's systems in place. This has wheels that they can roll it, and sure, certainly we should try it out. But it's not a surprise that all of this money was already allocated to buy these bins, and also there's no like sneaky things going on, and of like trying to implement or introduce trash fees to our citizens. We're just trying to bring more services and make Holyoke a beautiful place that we can all enjoy.
Thank you. So I'm trying to sit here and recall as that question was being asked. And I think the problem that occurred is that this was way back in 21, and now we're in 23. And so much happened in between. You know, it was sort of like, it seemed like it was a very long time ago. And then, say, for myself personally, I was like, now, was that trash bins or recycling bins, right? Because I've had people requesting recycling bins for 10 years. So they're like, oh, are we getting recycling bins, right? But I think, by and large, this will be very positively received. I was just feeling like it was coming across as being rigid in the way that it was framed initially, but when you walked in and said 96, 64, 35 if you need it, okay, right there, big problem gone, and just keep using your old barrels for your other things, the yard, another problem gone. And I just see it as something that was inherited and now it's being implemented. And I think the key thing is getting our recycling going again, which I'm very happy about, and I'm sure I'm echoing others when I say that.
Councilor Jourdain has a lot of good questions, so I just want to make sure I keep on
Okay.
answering them as I've gone along. You said if there's any studies regarding has this worked in other communities. I gave an example, City of Englewood in New Jersey. I know it's not Massachusetts, but we've done this for both trash and recycling. What you find out is that trash is picked up quicker and cleaner, and the residents are happy because they have, you know, a trash can. You know, they get the trash can from the city. I could ask municipalities from around here. You know, Chicopee has their own program, but it's a little different because it's pay as you throw also. And they only give out the 35 gallons trash cans that I saw on the streets. But I'll follow up with Councilor Jourdain and let you know. I know his concerns, so I appreciate them. So
Thank you. Councilor Maldonado Velez? And if I missed anybody else, please, I'll make sure I check the list again. Thanks.
Thank you. Izzy, were you up?
It's cool. I'm good.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Carl and Libby, for coming down tonight to discuss this new initiative. I was actually in Chicopee this morning, and I actually saw firsthand the trash collectors using the system that we're about to start implementing and how less strenuous it is on the worker. You also mentioned earlier how there's possible hazards when you're picking up trash bags with, you know, we've been discussing needles a lot in this body. So, you know, anything that we can to lessen the occupational hazards for our employees is the best, the better it is for them. And I think in turn, it's the better for the citizens as well, for sure. You know, I was excited when I saw this. When Mayor Garcia posted it, I myself, you know, I'm an able-bodied individual. I live in a property where I don't have to move the trash because the landlord has it in a place where the trash collector, DPW comes right up to it and picks it up. So like, but I know I'm not in the majority. I know there's many other individuals that have to move things, move the trash out of the way or bring it in and out. So I do appreciate you saying that, no, it's not just black and white, this policy. It is something that you are considering the fact that there are many different individuals with different abilities and making sure that we're able to get to a clean city. And I think this is one good first step towards that. I do want to echo a lot of what other councilors have said. I think recycling issue is probably, for me, something that's the biggest issue because Yeah, it's more around education. Even right now, this whole rollout of this program, I just hope that recycling comes pretty soon, or within the next year. So I know we did just get a recycling group together, so I'm hoping that you can work with them as well to make sure that we get our recycling really down packed in the city. With that said, I think this is not the first time that this has happened in within this body. I think this is like at least once a month or every other month. There's a certain policy that the department head has gone ahead and done simply because the ordinances don't catch up pretty quickly. We see how slow our ordinances are to pass, and there's something that in charter and rules we're working on to make sure that we are creating laws that are, in an efficient way. And, this is one of those things where I thank you. Thank you for taking the initiative, and hopefully once you do the 60 days and once we get a lot of feedback, we will come back to actually update the ordinance. But I will say this is not a you, Carl problem. I think this is just a problem with us within our own body of how efficient can and how quickly can we actually make change within our city, right? So again, I applaud you for what you're doing, and I hope that I wish you success. And if there's anything that we can do to help out, to make sure that we get a cleaner city for all of us, the better. Thank you.
Councilor McGivern?
Thank you, Chair Bacon. Just a couple of things. One, back to Councilor Jourdain's question. The original ARPA money in 2021 happened so quick, no one knew what was going on. And that's not even a critique. It's what it was. And Jerry Murphy did the best he could. The second round was a little bit more transparent, and we started hearing things about a lot of good changes that were coming and a lot of good ways the ARPA money would be used. And it really wasn't until Mayor Garcia that he involved everybody. ARPA money is not voted on by the city council. Your budget, any budget of city money is voted on by the city council at one point or the other. So it's like block grant monies. We finally now have a system where we can all participate in ARPA. Now that's not an excuse about the city council, because, and I haven't heard a blame game. I've heard tonight, I haven't heard a blame game leading up to this. I've heard, let's make this work. And that's what I think we're here for. And I think the idea is how to make this go forward. Change is not easy for everybody. Change is good when it's thought out. Change is better when there's more people involved with the change. And I think that's what we have to do. You answered a lot of questions, Carl, which we appreciate, and it's no surprise. You've been doing that since you got here. And I understand, especially with the elderly and the smaller bins and the options. I still think, what I said is going to become a problem, and we're not going to know, immediately. But the possibility of an option of, a household gets a bin from the city, an option to buy a smaller bin as a backup to their one big bin.
Oh, yeah, we'll let them swap it out. We'll take the big bin back and give them a smaller bin.
No. That's not what I was saying.
Okay.
The option to keep the big bin and now pay for a smaller bin to be a family of bins in their household. There are households out there, and it doesn't mean they're not recycling, although it could be, that that need for whatever reason more than the 96 gallons. And the pictures you showed us, what Libby talked about in her ward, my former neighborhood in Hunts, I understand it. There's a lot that we're going to learn as you roll this out. But in the meantime, this is the most important thing I can say this evening is we need to start writing this ordinance so in the long run it works to the program that you've proposed and you're gonna roll out. Right. Because if we don't get the ordinance right, it doesn't mean we have to do it tonight by any means. If we don't get the ordinance right, you're not going to have enforcement options. If you don't have enforcement options, it's what we have now, not because the ordinance is wrong, but because it's not enforced. Right. It's not a 35-gallon bin when you read the ordinance. It's a 35-gallon bin with a cover on top of it. Right. Put out at a certain time of day and no earlier and no later, it has to be removed from the street. Right. And the person coming by with the truck takes the cover off, dumps the trash, throws the bin. We'll get into that another day. And we as homeowners go out and pick up the covers, hopefully before the wind comes, because I have, over the years, 3 recycling bins that are on Route 91 because the winds were over 35 miles an hour, and instead of flipping it over, and I don't say put it down nicely, but, don't let the wind pick it up and bring it to 91. I mean, these are the things that we can work out, but I look forward to working and making the change work. But I think the quicker we get an ordinance, and everything we want to put in the ordinance you may not like, but the quicker we get to some ordinance at some point, and I'm not saying immediately, enforcement is going to be the key. Because the person putting out the trash bags with no bin, never mind a bin with no cover, is not going to stop doing it if it can't be enforced. And we have to get back to recycling. And I'm not preaching. I mean, I've talked about recycling for forever. I'm a big proponent of recycling. It's so important because it makes everything work. And it's the right thing to do for the environment. It's the right thing to do because what we don't recycle makes our tipping fees higher, and our transfer fees higher. It's the right thing to do all around. And I think most residents understand it, the ones that don't. The minute you tell them, we're not picking up your trash because there's recyclables in your trash for the mainstream, is when they're going to start recycling. And I'm sorry. That's the sad part about life is, 5 households on the street, 4 people are doing the right thing, 1 household's not. It's not fair to the 4 households that are doing the right thing. But we need to get this ordinance right so that it can be properly enforced when the time comes.
Carl, did you want to?
Yeah, Counselor, I'm working with the Solicitor's Office already on the new ordinance, updating the ordinance regarding this.
So,
We need to do it together. That, the Solicitor's Office with us tonight?
we have Attorney Mantaleski on Zoom and Attorney Bissonette.
Okay, because as you know, you need 9 votes to pass a new ordinance. And I want to hear more about the option I'm talking about for a household to get a second bin, even if it's a smaller one.
So, Councilor Rivera, I saw your hand up. Was that an old one?
No, it wasn't. It's actually, there were some points I kind of wanted to make regarding the costs and cost savings. And I guess if Carl could probably speak to like how much trash costs us in the community, right? With regards to us dumping it, and if the plan or the idea behind a lot of this is to try to cut back or mitigate costs on trash that then can help you more or less not repurpose funding, but use some of the excess funding or whatnot, the funding that was usually spent on trash to help maintain some of the vehicles, maintain some, or whatever, at the end of the day, some of the other communities that are doing this kind of stuff, the idea behind it is to cut back costs. And for us in a community where everything is constantly going up, I think that for our departments to find different ways to cut back costs, that makes a lot more sense. And I feel like this is somewhat of a mechanism to start doing that. So I'm wondering if this was kind of some of the idea behind it, or if there's any data points that can speak to how much we spend in trash yearly and how much money we could possibly save with regards to just going to the gallons, right? Obviously with the parameters put forth to make sure that everyone is being serviced. But at the end of the day, if there's ways for us to be able to save on trash, it kind of makes sense for us to try to find ways to do that, if that makes sense, Carl.
Yeah, I have to take a look at what our budget is for trash services, and I don't remember exactly what we paid per ton, but I know it went up from last year. But Jamie Morrow negotiated a good contract where we thought it was going to be a lot more than we did, almost 20% more in tipping fees. But she negotiated it down, and she did a great job on that. But I have to get you the numbers of what it was last year, the tipping fee, and what it is this year, showing the difference in price. And as far as the savings, I probably won't have any number, concrete number, until after this program is rolled out and we see what's going on a month-by-month basis.
Okay. Counselor Puello?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quickly, I wanted to bring up one last point because we started talking about drafting the ordinance. And, I'm happy to hear that we're willing to be less restrictive. I think that's a really good thing. But I also wanted to remind everybody that the ordinance has up to 12 35-gallon bins. So the amount of bins that people have is really important too. And I just wanted to foot stop that when we're writing the ordinance. If now we're saying we're okay with giving people 35-gallon bins, but we want them to pay however much money that's going to cost, and people already have their own bins, so just let them use their own bin. If you want to give people a purple and black bin that says Holyoke on it, that's great. If you want it to be assigned to the property, that's awesome. But people already have their own bins, so I think hopefully, I don't know how we're planning on drafting this, but I hope when we are, people are willing to be not as restrictive as some people are proposing, and that you just let people use their own bins. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Jourdain?
Thank you. I just went back through my notes in preparation for the meeting, and one question that
Can you get a little closer to your mic or something?
yeah, how about now? I was just going through my notes for the meeting, and one of the things that I noticed that a question I was asked to ask was, sometimes on trash day, citizens will put out a small item, maybe an old lamp, maybe an umbrella, maybe a small, broken stool, something as a small trash item, and they'll put it next to their trash barrel. They don't make a special trip, especially if they're really busy or they can't get down to the city yard to make a special trip to go to make a drop off of an item. Is the city going to still be able to accommodate some of these reasonable? Obviously, it troubles me to no end when I see couches and the tree belts, how that doesn't get ticketed, and people leave a couch or some enormous item out. That's insane. But if somebody has a small item, I guess they gotta maybe stick it in the barrel and have it, even if the lid doesn't all the way shut, that type of a situation. Are we gonna be reasonable with people? Because I know now you're only allowed so many visits, and I know for certain people it's limited hours on certain days that you can come down. And it's something that is helpful to a lot of citizens. So I just want to see how regimented we're going to be with some of this. And I want us to consider that point as well. And I wanted to share that constituent concern with you, Carl, just for your maybe initial thoughts.
Well, depending on the lamp, depending on what they're throwing out, some stuff should be brought down to our bays because they're not supposed to be in the trash in the first place. So this is where the education part of what people can put in the trash and should be recycling or should bringing down as a bulk item down at our bays.
Okay.
So
I guess we'll have to get further education on it, but I guess, if somebody has a small cardboard box full of, certain miscellaneous items, and they put it on the side of their trash, they've done that historically, and the city's been good about picking it up, or they got a small hail of a sundry items. I just wanted to, hopefully there's going to be some reasonableness maybe built into it to accommodate. I mean, again, if it's a major thing where people have a clean out of their house, then they need to, you know, bring all those items down to the city yard, or if there's special disposal rules. I don't know. Those are just some of the things I'm sharing with you, just some of the things that I'm hearing, and I wanted to pass it on. I guess we'll have to think about that. But again, I appreciate you helping us with this.
Thanks. Counselor Givner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've been listening to all these conversations, and I'm looking forward to moving forward. And I'm not sure how we work on that ordinance, but it seems like it sounds like it could be pretty straightforward. I do hear the concerns raised by Councilor JOURDAIN about miscellaneous items. I think that we all as a community need to educate ourselves and one another, our neighbors. Whenever I have, new tenants, I make sure to share with them the flyer from the DPW. It has a calendar on when trash is picked up. It lets people know where they can take their miscellaneous items. I mean, the fact that our DPW has been picking up things that they shouldn't has kind of put them in a position where things are expected of them that they shouldn't have to do, like picking up piles of bags on the side of the street. So I am looking forward to this rolling out, and I see how efficient it can be. I see how much money will be saved by the city by doing this. If you have cans that are picked up by machine instead of by person, it'll be nice to see the efficiency of something like this being rolled out. So I think all our concerns will be answered. It seems like things have been well thought out. We're not the first city to do this. We're not the biggest city. We're not the smallest city. And as special as Holyoke is in its size and layout, we are one of many old cities in the Northeast. So I'm sure things will work out just fine. And we have a 60-day rollout where it sounds like a lot of kinks will be worked out. So I'm really looking forward to this. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti?
Hi, I'll keep my comments brief. I've heard everyone's comments multiple times, and I know I don't often speak up enough, but I just want to highlight the fact that we all as a city council talk to department heads about the importance of trying to save money for the city, and that's exactly what a department head is coming to us to do. And I guess because we didn't feel like we had enough involvement in these decisions, that we need to ask all these questions. But Carl, going forward, I know that I can reach out to you if a constituent reaches out to me and has specific questions or concerns. So I'm not going to continue to belabor points that have already been made. I just want to thank you for trying to think long term. And we're not the first city to do something like this. I think we act like we are, but we're really not. And we have a reputation where surrounding communities are like, let's go drop our trash in Holyoke because it's easy. And if we can start to change that narrative, that costs us extra money every time that happens. So I just want to thank DPW, the commissioners. We're all learning, and Carl, you've been here for 5 minutes, and you've done a lot already. So I can tell that you're obviously always recognizing that there's room for improvement with communication. But overall, I just appreciate when department heads come to us trying to figure out these solutions to save the city money in the long run. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to take a stab at summarizing the main points that I've heard and I want to check in with Attorney Monteleschi and Attorney Bissonette. Who is writing or working on this ordinance revision? Is it one of you? It's Attorney Degnan? Okay. So, Attorney Monteleschi or Attorney Bissonette, I see you on the Zoom. So I'm going to summarize on behalf of the committee, and committee members, please jump in and correct me if you think I'm either missing something or misstating something. So what I've heard is, and you're probably already working on this, we have to roll in, of course, the 96-gallon piece because we don't have it. To the extent that there is flexibility on the size of the barrels, that we would delineate out that opportunity in some way between 96, 64, and 35. And to maybe break it into sections that the yard waste piece would just be articulated separately, because now I think it's just sort of 12 of these for garbage and yard waste, so that it's clear to folks and to us that that part is still there. I think that the bags in the can, if it's not already in there, is an important thing, because the other thing we didn't touch upon are all the critters that are ripping all the bags apart. And I mean, there's been bear sightings all over the city this year, more than I've ever heard before, I think, right? They know where to find it. So those are the major things. And then to think about and put in a draft some of the flexibility issues that we've talked about, about getting the more if needed. But I think personally, I'd like to see us just roll it out and see what happens first before we assume this, that, or the other thing. But I think to sort of have a section of the ordinance that we can chew on a little bit more in committee. But committee members, did I get the main points? Those are the ones that I'm picking up on. If anybody else, makers of the order, anything else come to mind that I might have missed for our attorneys to be rolling into this?
Madam Chair?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilor Rivera?
So for me, I think one important piece would be to, if the law department could also work, like, try to pick apart what the intentions are behind a lot of this is, in collaboration with the DPW and the people that kind of like mapped out this, so that the policy is actually aligning with the overall end goals are at the same time. Because for us to design a policy that later on might not fall in line with the goals of whatever the project is that they're trying to put together, that would be counterintuitive. I think that would be that's the most important thing for me, and that's all I wanted to point out.
Right. And it is in the context that we understand that Carl is working with the law department on crafting this. Yes, that's the context. Councilor Givner, were you trying to add something?
That was kind of the gist of it, so I'm all set.
Okay. Councilor McGivern.
I think you hit it all. If I heard you correctly, you said some draft language on the side about the option of getting a second bin, whatever size.
Yeah, and then it may be, I don't know how we talk about this in the ordinance, but maybe the extra things that would go in the trash would have to fit in the bin. I don't know. But anyway, some discussion and language about that if we're changing expectations, just the early warning system of those changes, I guess. However we can write that up. And I mean, it might be reinforcing what it already says, but I'm not sure about that part. If that's the case, it might be a case of, well, this has been going along this way for a long time, but as of this date, we're going to really be tightening up the reins, if you will, and going to the policy or the ordinance. So if that does it, then Attorney Bissonette, if you can just share those pieces from committee with Attorney Degnan, and then when there is a draft ready, if somebody can make Jeffrey aware, and then we'll move when there's some language pulled together that we can take up. We will be meeting again on October 24th. There's a number of public hearings on that, but I've let committee members know if we need an additional meeting on a certain night to wrap up certain things that we want to get done more quickly, we can do that. So we'll leave it to legal to get back to us when they're ready with the draft. How's that? Okay. Counselor Jourdain?
Yeah, that all sounds good. Again, as they're considering the initial draft, again, how special circumstances are handled and sort of thinking about a fair process for residents when they have, unique circumstances and who's going to hear those concerns and how remedies will be dealt with. I'd like them to give consideration to those situations for people's unique circumstances that do need the help. I just want to make sure there's a carve-out section in there somewhere that addresses their needs.
A process.
Exactly. Yeah, a process.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. With remedies. Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
So
I'll
if
make a
we're all
motion
set,
motion to table.
yes, and wait for legal draft.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So this item is tabled until we hear back from legal, and we'll put it on an agenda, hopefully soon. Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to go back to regular order and take up item 4.
Motion to take up item 4.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So item 4, order that ordinance 2-421 be amended to include all public hearings so that the public has an opportunity to truly participate in their government and to advance transparency. We had a very long discussion about this at the last meeting. We revisited a lot of things that we'd already discussed. Counselor Jourdain offered to provide some language at this meeting tonight for legal, which he has done, and I understand he sent it to one of the counselors also. And so what I'd like to do is just have this proposed language be sent over to legal so that legal can review it, put it into legal form with any review of finding it proper or not. So I would like to entertain a motion that we send the proposed language over to legal to come back to committee in legal form.
I'll second that motion, Madam Chair, but if any of the committee members, have any additional amendments, I'd certainly be warm to any of their thoughts or suggestions, but.
Yep,
if they're
under
willing
discussion. Yep.
Yep. If they're willing to support that, then I think that's a good approach that you're suggesting. If we need to make any additional changes, let's certainly do that. Okay. So, but I think it captures hopefully the spirit. I give particular to Jose, Councilor Maldonado Velez. I'd be interested to hear his take on it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Maldonado Velez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilor Jourdain, for drafting this up. I think it pretty much covered everything that we have been discussing around this particular ordinance. Since then, I think the only question that has come up, particularly around like open meeting laws, as far as a chair receiving communication and then sharing it with the body. So I guess having somewhere, just making sure that when communication is received from, for example, if I was chairing a committee and I were a public hearing and I were to receive an email, making sure that email is not necessarily shared with the rest of the committee until the actual public hearing, until the actual meeting is convened. And I guess, I don't know if that is an actual issue, and I'm interested to know what the law department says around that. Just making sure that we're not violating any open meeting laws and sharing that information if it's considered discussion or whatnot. But aside from that, I believe this is a lot of pretty much everything that we've discussed in the last couple of meetings around these ordinances.
Okay, thank you. So Attorney Bissonnette, you heard that question, or Attorney Monteleschi?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Madam Chair, if you would like.
Sure.
I think the communication can be forwarded just as long as there's no deliberation between anyone and there's no discussion regarding it. no questions asked, just an FYI type transmittal, then I think that is fine. But then any sort of discussion or questions be held and wait until you are in public session.
Okay, thank you. Any
Yeah,
other?
Thank you. No, I was just gonna say thank you, Attorney Mantaleski. Yeah, I'm just look forward to y'all looking through it and making sure that it makes sense and it follows all of our laws. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and it's been seconded. All in favor? I think we have to do roll call because we're hybrid. Vacan, yes. Maldonado Velez?
Yes.
Counselor Givner?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Jourdain?
Yes.
So that passes 5-0, and we look forward to the legal form. When legal has it ready, we will put it on an agenda. Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion on item 5.
Take it off the table.
And
Second.
yes, all in favor? Aye. Item 5, ordered that the City Council amend Ordinance 2-336A and B to reflect a streamlined process for disposition of tax title properties and other properties not needed by the city for municipal purposes, and to add a new section for the creation of an abutter lots sale program. Now, we've all had the language for a couple of meetings on the abutter lots, and there is other language there too, relative to if public properties are not eligible as an abutter lot. What we don't have is a red line version of showing us what the current language is and what the changes would be to the current language. So for me, I just like to see what the changes will be, and it's hard to look side by side from a full document. So that's just me, but other members of the committee, do you have comments or questions on this at this point? We have had it for a bit on the abutter language and the other as well. Counselor Jourdain and then Attorney Mantaleski.
Yeah, just briefly, Madam Chair. Yeah, that's basically where I'm supportive of the concept. I just like to see the red line version so I can know exactly what I'm voting in. So if we get to that point, that would be really helpful to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Attorney Mantaleski?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to, you should have 2 documents in front of you. There should be one entitled Section 2-336, Real Property Disposition or Acquisition. And then there should be a second one, which just says Abutter Lots Sales Program Guide. So there should be 2, and hopefully you have both. The Abutter Lots Sales Program Guide is completely new. So there's nothing that the city currently has regarding that, so that won't have a red line. And then the new ordinance, that is, I'm going to say 95% new. So I'm not sure how much a red line will help. I'm happy to provide that, but it's going to be substantially different than the current ordinance that we have. Maybe not in certain terminology, but in form. So I'm not sure how much a red line would help, but again, I'm happy to provide it, but I just wanted to kind of make that clear.
Okay, so if the changes between what currently exists and this are that significant, what, as a practical matter, are the main changes? I understand that the goal is to streamline, but will we still, so what's hard to do, looking side by side, is to see where the checks and balances are. Streamlining is good, but sometimes we end up figuring out later that we lost some steps that maybe we needed if we don't kind of know what they are.
Completely understand. So essentially, the main points, I guess, that we are trying to accomplish in conversation with the Office of Planning and Economic Development, the Treasurer's Office, is it was stated a streamlined process, however, adding in an abutter lot sales program, which there is in Westfield, I believe there's in Springfield, several other communities in the Commonwealth have them. But essentially, we're looking to have a more expedite timeline with respect to disposition of real estate.
So we're shortening the timelines?
Right, so it's giving the city departments and the city council a 30-day timeline, which can be changed. It can be 45 if that's needed, or anything that the council desires. But a shorter time period to determine whether or not certain property is needed for a municipal or public purpose, or the city has a need for it. Because what we're seeing is we're having properties that come in specifically related to tax title properties that we get in. Some of them are small vacant lots, which are completely great and would be eligible under an abutters lot sale that should go to an abutter. We've had several abutters come to the legal department asking, hey, we saw that the city took this property. It's, the 10th of an acre. Then we're interested in purchasing it, and we have to say, okay, well, first we have to go to the council, have it declared surplus, and then we have to go through this process. So this would help move that along to abutters who just kind of want to have, another 10th of an acre added onto their property. And there's specific limitations as to what would be eligible for that type of sale in these documents. But essentially, when we're seeing tax title properties come in, nothing's really happening with them until, someone says, oh, we have this, what's been going on with that? And maybe we have a use for it, maybe we don't, but let's start to try to get some of these properties essentially off the city's rolls and back onto the tax roll so that the city can start making some more income. So this allows essentially when the tax title custodian, who for the City of Holyoke is our treasurer, when he comes in, or when he gets notice that we have a decree of foreclosure, from the land court on a tax title, he has essentially 2 weeks to get that communication to all the city departments, including city council, and say, hey, this is here. Now, you have 30 days from the time that the city council puts it on an agenda to say whether or not there's going to be some sort of use for it. So about a month, once it appears on the city council's first agenda, for any city department to come to the city council essentially and say, this is what I have a need for the property. If the treasurer doesn't hear from anybody, if the city council doesn't hear from anybody, then the treasurer can then take the next steps to dispose of the property.
And excuse me just for a second, what is that timeline now? Is that timeline a lot longer than 30 days?
There is no timeline really, and so we're kind of putting that in now. To start to get some of these properties that we're just sitting on that nothing's happening with.
To make a structure, to create a structure.
Exactly.
So it's pretty much almost a more than 90% rewrite?
Right.
Okay. All right. Are there questions from the committee? Has everybody looked at this and read it? I mean, I guess one question I had on the abutter one was looking at A, B, C, D, and E. So because parking is such a problem downtown, I'm seeing that in this new deal, B, C, D, and E would be eligible, but A, because they don't have like a line of abutter, would not be eligible. And it seems like things are so dense downtown that A property might have as much interest in that lot as somebody else, given that, say theoretically if it was a parking issue. So does it need to be that rigid? Or?
No, it can be whatever the council, thinks is best in communication. It's not necessarily have to be that way. And I think you can make certain exceptions too for DR or any type of zone. If you want to be like, A is an abutter specifically in this zone, you could do that.
All right. Because, I like the idea of things being able to move more quickly, but I also want to make sure that whatever we're creating, people end up feeling that the process is fair at the end of the day, right? So I think that's important. And the part about preference being given relative to when there's competition for the lots, that's where things get really messy. And that is so subjective. I don't know. That one gives me pause because I could just see that escalating from time to time if there were, I don't know. I would just say whatever we would do, we want it to be something measurable. You know?
Got it.
Like when you say keeps it in excellent condition, I mean, one person's excellent is different from another. But so I would just be careful about that because we want it to be a win-win, right?
Right.
But those are just a couple of my takeaways in looking it over. The rest of it really, it is just really dependent on how well the department is functioning to carry out certain other functions, right?
I think, and I totally agree, but I think that having something in place like this will, you know, really get departments to understand that they have to look at it. You have to make this a priority. You're going to have to look at this and see, what have we been looking for? Do we have a need for this? We can't just let this sit around any longer. You know, we have a certain timeline in the ordinance that we have to do this. Let's get it done. So then again, I think it's beneficial from a lot of perspectives, you know, but from the city side, I think that, you know, you're definitely going to be able to start getting some properties, you know, back on the tax rolls, which is great.
Right, and that is what we want to do. Do any other members of the committee have any questions or concerns? And I'm thinking if we implement this, we could always amend it if we found as a practical matter some things became problematic.
Right, I mean, it's new, so if there, you know, is an implementation issue that nobody foresaw at that point in time, then absolutely the city council can at any point in time bring it up to have it amended.
Yeah, I guess my only thing would be I would want to expand that abutter to let A be eligible. That's just me, because they're all like right there. And then on the preferences, I would just want them all just to be measurable. Like the second one, I think is totally subjective. Whereas the other one, if you've timely done your maintenance and care according to the ordinances, that's measurable, right? If you've paid your taxes and been in compliance with codes, that's measurable. So all those, I think, are good. But I'll defer to the committee as well because I'm just one member of this committee. Councilor Givner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, I think this is something we need. I think it's a good idea. If we want to lot A, then we'd have something other than an abutter lot program, because I think it's pretty self-explanatory that it's the abutter lots who have access or the first dibs on this. But if you wanted to include like the whole block, like that would be different, and then it gets too sticky with the different blocks on the city. So, but I don't really see a problem with it as it is. But I can understand how it's so close but so far away for like the lot in A, but it's not abutting the lot, so I feel like they wouldn't priority.
I will just say that in the event that, so let's say that the city puts it there out to abutters, but you know there's no interest, then it can open it up to the next step.
Oh, it can.
And just put it out to full RFP, right?
Oh, and that's how it's written? Okay.
Right.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
So there is kind of those contingency steps, and we planned for that to make sure that we're not just sitting there being like, what do we do now?
All right, okay. Councilor McGivern.
My question is a little reverse to that. Wouldn't it go out to RFP first to see if someone wants to build on the lot? And then when there's no interest, you go to the abutter lot?
They're non-buildable.
It's actually the reverse, yeah. So when you have an abutter lot sale, it's for the purpose, the abutter lots program is to give preference to these abutters to attempt to keep it, I mean, ideally, you'll see it in a residential situation where you have in a butter with one lot, and there's this, you know, small vacant lot that the city took via tax title. But you can also have it in like a DR, if there's a small lot. I mean, we have, I think, one down on, I think it's Lyman Street, where we have a small vacant lot that used to house a building, but it doesn't anymore. But that could be used for parking or something like that. And so when you have an abutting business that maybe could utilize some parking or have a parking lot, that would be good too, or some other type of use. But yes, the preference in this case, if you have something that is under a certain amount of size and under a certain amount of value, it would go under the abutters lots program.
Right. It can't be a buildable lot, right? It can't be buildable to be an abutter property. That's what
Right, I think that there is, it can't be a buildable lot, but it can definitely like have a parking lot or something like that.
Right, but you couldn't build a house on it, according to what
No,
this is.
right.
Okay. Thank you.
But you can do, if there's two vacant lots on either side or two together that we have, then you can A&R those or do whatever you need to do to try to make them buildable.
Okay, thanks. Councilor Puello, did I see your hand up?
I'm good, thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? If people are good with this, has everybody had a chance to look it over? I guess, I say give it a try the way it is, and if we get a lot of pushback, then I just hope we hear and come in and amend it to make it more workable if we start getting conflicts in any way on some of these. Hopefully we won't. And Attorney Mantaleski, what do you think about these preferences? Because they're not really prioritized, and there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, I definitely understand and completely, having taken a second look at it, agree with your excellent comment. I think that, you know, that one could, is very subjective, and I definitely understand that. So yeah, if we can just, because I know we have, I think we have language in here, or we could put language in here that we could have preference given to an abutter that, you know, has no Board of Health violations or, you know, which I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah. So committee, what say you?
Madam Chair?
Councilor Divner?
I think that's a good point, and that we should have some language in there that makes sure that there are no issues. I see the code violation review there, so I think that should be enough to suffice, but I do think that's an important part. But I think we should give it a try and move it forward.
Okay, so Attorney Mantaleski, this is language, but it's not in legal form yet, right?
Right, so, I mean, you can, the guide really here, the abutters lots guide that we did would be something kind of more that would be kept with OPED for them, but we can, however, put this, so that it could be revised as needed, but we can definitely put it into legal form and add it into the ordinance, which I'm perfectly fine with doing too. But as of right now, I think it's more of a guide, right, for departmental use, but 100% happy to have it in an ordinance as well. And then the actual disposition or acquisition, yeah, we would just need to put it in the amendment language on the top and the whereas clauses, so yes.
Right.
I can put both of them into legal form, adding in the change with respect to that preference section and forward those to for next council meeting.
Okay, because the way that the order came to us from Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti was that we amend the ordinance to reflect this updated process and add the abutter sale program.
Right. So yeah,
right.
I'm happy to put that into legal form, both of the documents in there. Absolutely.
Okay. So Councilor Puello.
Sorry, I just had a quick question rereading this. I just wanted to go to the part where it says that all sales need to be approved by the mayor and the city council, and how that differs from the current RFP process. So does that mean Like if there's a reverter in place, for example, that now the mayor can go out and extend this?
For the sale of the property?
Yeah, like if there's some kind of additional terms and conditions that are added onto the sale, because traditionally the city council approves it, right?
The
Like a
city
normal
council approves it and the mayor has to sign off on it.
So, okay, and the mayor signs off on it, because I mean, that's, okay, I mean, that's not my understanding through the current RFP process, is the city council approves it, and then we give it to the mayor to, you know, execute or do whatever, I guess, oversee the sale. But as far as I know, I don't think he does any approving, right?
No, he does, and there's language, so the city council essentially approves that this property is going to be sold for this purpose. And then it's up to the city departments and the mayor to, come up with different terms that need to be put in compliance with the sale and the intent of the sale. So that and I know there is case law on that, Councilor Puello, and I'm happy to provide that to you. I know there is an ordinance or order on here, that you guys had put in, with respect to the reverter process. And so I do have something coming to you guys on that. It's just not ready, today. But, cause this just happened last week, I think, at your last meeting. But I do have something, coming down the pike for you guys on that. So I will be, getting that to you guys probably within the next 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
So do you think, and I appreciate that, do you think it would make sense, I mean, as far as that sentence goes, just to keep things kind of consistent and to make sense, do you think that sentence could probably be replaced with, like, as this other ordinance, you know, like maybe citing this other RFP ordinance, like follow those requirements, and then, you know, we can do this, but just to piggyback off that original ordinance that says that the city council, you know, blah, blah. You know what I'm asking?
Kind of, but I think that, this language is in compliance with our, our charter, our state laws, our statutes, so I think that it's okay.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
So in this that we're talking about now with this streamlining and the abutter, that's different than our other orders relative to the reverter, which might apply to some of these though. So they might relate to each other depending on the property, right?
Well, it depends on what the terms, I mean, you're
Right.
looking at something where you have terminology of a sale, like a purchase and sale agreement, like this does not, state that reverters need to be in place. We don't technically need to have reverters, we can, sometimes they're beneficial, sometimes they're not, I don't know, sometimes the city just wants them for whatever reason.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, it really comes down, reverters really come into play when you're going to be putting out an RFP. So they don't necessarily need to be for an abutters lots program, for example, if you're not doing a whole RFP process.
Right. Yeah, to me, the reverters come into play when somebody's supposed to do something and we're expecting a property to be improved and then time goes on and it doesn't happen. We want the ability to pull it back, right? I mean, that's my shorthand on that, but, all right. So committee Councilor Maldonado-Velez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question to the Chair, to Attorney Monteleschi. I just want to have clarity around legal form and who makes legal form and how much work the councilors have around creating legal form. And I just base this off item 4 that I know Councilor JOURDAIN went back and drafted some legal form, because based on the last meeting, we were told that the councilors are the ones in charge to do legal form, and that the solicitor's office will then in turn go ahead and sort of approve that or not approve that or just scan it. And I'm sort of hearing a different story with this order. I'm not against this order. I think when it first came on, I think it was, I support Councilor Murphy putting in this order. I think it can be great for our city, but it's, for me, the question comes down to process, because I just really want to make it very clear as to what is the process of reading ordinances. And right now, it's feel kind of like the solicitor's office choosing what they want to put into legal form, depending on how they feel about certain orders. So I just wanted to have that clarity within our bodies.
100%, and I'm happy to answer that question for you, Councilor Maldonado-Velez. So under your rules, technically, it is up to the city council to put something into legal form. I completely understand that as a practice that has not been happening, and I think the solicitor's office has been, more than happy to continue with that process and draft the legal form. But I think technically under your rules, the city council drafts the legal form or drafts the ordinance, goes to the solicitor's office, re-review it to make sure it is in legal form and it is good to go, and that there's no objections as to legality, that it's in compliance with our charter, with the statutes. I think that's how the rules are written. Your rules, those are your internal rules, how they're written. However, I will say that I know that hasn't been the practice, and I think you know, sometimes there have been times when the council has asked the solicitor's office to draft an ordinance, and maybe the solicitor's office doesn't have as much clarity as it should have from the discussion at the council level. So I think that it's a process that we need to work on together to get to a point, because I do think that obviously the law department should be reviewing it and making sure, and sometimes it's easier just for the solicitor's office to be drafting something, right? Because I mean, we have the knowledge, we have that background. So I completely understand your frustration, and I think that it's something that maybe should be discussed at charters and rules and figure out, you know, what is probably the best way going forward. And I think it probably is having the solicitor's office drafting, but just with additional and more helpful information from the council with respect to exactly what they want to be seen in that ordinance. And I think that's kind of where the disconnect has lied. And I don't think it's, you know, council's fault. I don't think it's the solicitor's office's fault. I just think it's, you know, I think there needs to be more of a symbiotic relationship of working together and making sure that we're getting to a place where everybody feels good about what we should be doing. I will say that with respect to the abutters lots and the new real property, I did work extensively with OPED. So we had been with Aaron Vega and John Dychek. We did, and Rory Casey, the treasurer, he also had a hand in this. So this was definitely a collective effort. It wasn't just me alone. And so I don't want to make you think that I was just solely the one that did it. There was definitely a collective effort with comments and suggestions and discussions. This has been going on since I started here in November. So it's almost a year in. So I think that kind of mentality as to the collaboration can be brought to this too. So I think it's just making sure that the solicitor's office, it knows exactly what you want in the ordinance, and that is, you know, I think we need to, if we have questions, we need to be able to ask those too. So I think it's, again, I don't think it's any person's fault as to who should have been drafting versus who was drafting and what happened, or what should be versus what should not be. I think there just needs to be more communication, if that makes sense. And I know.
No, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and I completely understand what you're saying. I just, you know, it's just for consistency's sake, and I hear you. I mean, part of the reasons why I wanted to share charter and rules was just the messiness that were the rules, and I think, you know, you have given opinions that have definitely shown how contradicting and some of the rules may be, and I appreciate it. But, you know, that was just my question, because it just seemed like it's a very different way we're operating week to week just within like legal forms. But like I said, I'm totally in support of this. I think it's a great idea, and I look forward to charter and rules. I think the rule you're talking about is 9H, which is a very convoluted rule. So
right.
I'm sure it'll be fun to discuss, so we can make it clear for all of us for future council bodies as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Attorney Mantelewski, as chair of the committee, I want to clarify something too relative to this, because, you know, as you indicated, you are new to the city. And we've had the law department provide us with draft ordinance language before we've even taken up issues in the past. And certainly it's been all over the board. And this abutter language is an example of that as well. So things can come to us in different ways, and that's fine. But the practical matter is that ordinances shall not be drawn into legal form unless the committee has taken a vote on the matter. And that's Rule J. It's not vague, it's clear. And then it says legal form for ordinance changes shall be provided 48 hours prior to a city council meeting. And if legal form is not provided 48 hours prior to the meeting, then it won't move forward. Now, that legal form, since I've served on the council, has always been provided by our law department. It has never been written by the Ordinance Committee since I've served on the council. And I mean, there's folks that have been on the council longer than I have that may speak to that. But in any event, I don't want to belabor that here, because right now, what I'd like to do, we have a motion on the table to move this, to get it in legal form. So I would like to accomplish that. But before I close off any discussion, I have Councilor McGivern who'd like to be recognized.
Just because I think it's so important, and I'll be quick, is legal form is the law department and always should be the law department. Because we, you know, even though there are attorneys that are our city councilors, it's it's the most important thing that we do is we're ready. This is what we want to see drafted put into legal form, because the committee's taken their final vote or is ready to take their final vote. But it's content, I think, that is what confuses everybody. And content is more of a draft. Content should begin with the committee level and refer to the law department to either draft the legal form or to, as quote unquote, say, put it into legal form. What the rule is trying to prevent is one or two city councilors getting language into legal form adopted before the city council without discussion. You know, if you look at what came in on, I think it was item 4 tonight, there is an existing ordinance, and the proposed language looks like it's in legal form, but it was referred to the law department tonight by the committee. And I think that's the difference of content and legal form is what we're talking about. And it's never been a big problem, but there have been times where certain city councilors have gotten things put into legal form, put on for a final vote to the city council without a proper discussion or without just coming out of the clear blue. And that is what we need to avoid in the future.
Okay. Attorney Monteleschi, is that, you're all set?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so on the motion then, the motion is that we would send this language over to legal to get put in legal form and come back to committee. So does somebody want to make that motion?
Just, Madam Chair, with
Yes.
with the amendment to the preference language, right? I just want to make sure
Yes,
that
yes,
okay.
as you had summarized, yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect.
Yes, thank you. Can I hear a motion?
So a motion send item 5 to legal to give us back legal form with the shortened version of what Attorney Monteleschi just said.
On the preferences, yeah. Is there a second?
Yes, we're here.
Was that a second, Councilor Jourdain?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Councilor Bacon, yes. Councilor Maldonado-Velez?
Yes.
Councilor Jourdain?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Givner?
Yes.
Okay, 4-0. It's tabled for legal form to come back to committee. Thank you all. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to take up item 6.
Motion to
moved.
take item 6.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Ordered that in accordance with the city charter, create ordinance language that confirms when a resident is elected as a ward councilor and subsequently moves to another ward during the term, the ward city council seat is vacated. So we've taken this up a few times and we've tabled it, and we've received some different opinions as to what the charter says and what it means and various other things. But this particular order is asking us to create language that would say, as a practical matter, that, as an example, I, as a Ward 5 councilor living in Ward 5 that am elected, and then I leave Ward 5, not leaving the city, but leaving the ward, would then be vacating that seat. And we did have some debate back and forth on committee. Some people seem to think it doesn't matter if you live in the ward or not for your term. However, I would note that there was a civil rights action in Springfield, Massachusetts on this very matter. And it is what lessened the at-large counselors to ensure the representation throughout the city of areas of the city with unique interests and populations. So I would just throw that out there. And if the maker of the order wishes to speak, or other members of the committee, Councilor Puello.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you taking this up. And yeah, I mean, I think you said it great. If there's a will on the committee to do this, I mean, I don't know, we'll see ever what people say. I just want to point out that, you know, we've asked the law department, I think this is going to be the third time now, to address the state law, section 134 from chapter 43. And it says every city councilor and school committee member who is elected to represent an individual district or ward shall have been an inhabitant of a place within the district or ward for which he is chosen for at least 1 year. Our charter is a little bit more restrictive, I think it's 2 years, immediately preceding his election. And then it says, and he shall cease to represent each district or ward when he shall cease to be an inhabitant thereof. So we asked for an opinion regarding this in the Public Service Committee. We didn't get one. This is the third time I asked for it here, because we've had a couple meetings regarding this. And I think the letters we've gotten are about the charter and everything else. So, I mean, I just want to point out, like, why won't the law department address this in writing in a legal opinion? If the legal opinion comes back and it says, oh, well, this doesn't apply in this situation for whatever reason, and the opinion makes sense, you know, it's not like some previous ones, then okay, no problem. You know, and if it doesn't, then okay. But I just don't understand the willingness or the lack of will to address this that we've asked for multiple times. But as far as the order goes, Madam Chair, I you know, whatever the will of the committee is, thank you.
So regardless of, and we can certainly request the legal opinion, and maybe we have not officially as a committee requested it directly. So we can do that now. And secondly, as long, we can make a rule that is more strict than a state law, but we can't undermine the state law. So there would be nothing to stop us from creating an ordinance that is more strict, as long as it's not in conflict with the law. So there is still some flexibility here regardless of interpretation. I really think it's a matter of what do we want to do. And certainly anything we do is only something that goes forward. Nothing goes retroactive in terms of any sort of ordinances. Councilor Givner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do recall several lengthy discussions about this, and I think we couldn't come to an agreement. If I recall correctly, we had a problem coming to an agreement on the terms as far as, you know, I don't think it's really fair to say that we didn't really care where in the city a council resides. I think it had more to do with, like, there's a big difference between a counselor, let's say, moving from Holyoke to Springfield or something versus, like, you know, my lease coming to an end and I have to move and I happen to end up in Ward 1, but I'm the Ward 4 counselor. So I think that the discussion had more to do with, you know, the what if somebody has to move, and, you know, these are 2-term seats. So it's hard to draft language that deals with malicious intent. I don't think obviously I'm not in favor of somebody running for a seat when they don't live in the city or in that ward, or if they have intentions of moving. But if someone, you know, again, the example, like if my lease came to an end, or, you know, God forbid, my house burned down and I had to move and I only happened to find, you know, a place to live in another ward or another, you know, city, I don't think it would be appropriate, but another ward, I think I should be able to to finish out my term, but then not be able to run again in the ward that I don't live in, obviously. So I think most of our conversation was about that and how we couldn't really agree on what those terms would really mean. Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree. I do think that's what it centered around. And what I'm wondering is if we had language that said certainly a temporary need to be out of the ward would not rise to the level of a vacancy. But if the absence exceeded X amount of time as a theoretical, say throwing out 6 months, that then you're effectively no longer a resident of that ward because your intention at that point wouldn't be to return. I believe state law has those kinds of exceptions in it because the lawmakers understood that things happen that are outside the control of people, but then their intention is to be back where they go. And so then the vacancy is only declared, at a later time or when that situation changes. So the question is, does the committee have an appetite to create any language around that is similar to the general language in the charter? Councilor Jourdain?
I suppose we could do that, Madam Chair, but I would just say this. Section 9, in my opinion, of the charter is clear. And the issue of residency and domicile relative to legislators is long, old case law. I thought the Secretary of State put a nice memo together on this issue. I think their office has done a nice job. This issue comes up periodically, but it's a long-standing old issue as to where people live. Are you a residency? For the purposes that we're using it, residency is determined by domicile. The courts have defined domicile under a certain framework of how that is determined, and there's case law that supports that. We should follow that. What I'm concerned about is when I read Section 9 of the Charter, it says a couple of things. One is the City Council shall be composed of 13 members, 1 counselor from each ward, and 8 from the city at large. So we start with that. That sentence, if you don't live in your ward, then we don't have a council composed of 1 counselor from each ward. You're gone. Second point, it says that the voters of the city shall elect, and it says the voters of each ward shall elect 1 counselor who shall be a resident therein. To me, that's crystal clear. And yet, we had a legal opinion that recently came out, and it said, you only have to be a resident just on election day. Where do you get that? It's inconsistent with what Section 9 reads, any logical interpretation of Section 9. Number 2, it's inconsistent with what we know for guidance from the Secretary of State's office. We're making this out to be a lot more than it is. The Special Act, 1896, that put Section 9 in there, Chapter 438. This is done well, and the case law since then supports it. So I think it's very clear. We're supposed to have ward counselors who are supposed to be a resident therein, and you're supposed to be 1 from each ward. That's what the rule is. It's been the rule since 1896. We should follow the rule. And how domicile is important is because there are circumstances where you have not permanently or for a time, as the Secretary of State's guidance in the case law says, given up your residency, i.e. you're burned out of your house, you're on a temporary situation, you're on vacation, there's circumstances. These different excuses or circumstances, many of these are old and have been vetted, and I think we should just already follow the framework, and that's what we should do. And at the end of the day, I know some of this comes down to the council's the judge of the qualifications of its own members. So we come back to that. I think that's section 13. So I mean, I don't know if we necessarily need another ordinance on top of all of this. I think we need to just follow the rules from before. I think what didn't help is the new legal opinion that says you only need to be a resident on election day. That, to me, not true. The rest of it, I don't think we necessarily need more rules. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Maldonado Velez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go ahead and agree with Councilor JOURDAIN on this one. I think he just made it very clear that there is a law that his interpretation may be different from how I interpret it. However, that means the law is written there, and if any councilor wants to challenge the eligibility of any of the council members, that's what should be happening. I have not seen any challenge. This is the fourth time that we've discussed this. First brought up in May, 5 months later, and so who's the councilor that's no longer living in their ward? That's what I want to see. That's the discussion that we should be having, because we're the ones that decide that. We're the ones that decide the eligibility of the members in our body. So I agree that it doesn't have to, we don't require another order or another ordinance, whatever it may be. If the maker of the order feels like there is a member of our body that should not be on the council, then that should be the order that should be put through. That's just my opinion right now. I'm ready to motion and say no to this particular order, but I know Councilor Rivera has his hands up, so I would definitely hold off to the motion till after he speaks. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe I should be on Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No one can see my hand up.
I'm sorry. My peripheral vision wasn't picking up the
I'm not blaming you, but everybody on Zoom gets their hands up, and I'm just sitting here keeping Councilor Bacon company.
Well, I will recognize you since you're sitting here, Councilor McGivern, and then I will recognize Councilor Rivera.
And I do have a different take. Not that I disagree with anything that's been said, but I think the importance here is the charter, and we have an old charter. And I think sometimes we forget a charter is a mass general law. And a mass general law cannot change our charter without going through the proper channels of a community to change their charter, which could be either a charter reform on the ballot or 2/3 of the council, the mayor, and the legislature then signing off. So the mass general laws are important, and maybe they are correct or something that we want to consider bringing into our charter, but right now they're not. And to me, the opinion is different, or the different interpretation of what I've been hearing is that we want the 7 wards, and we want 7 different individuals that represent those wards, being a resident of those wards, and that's where it all begins. And we have a very strict requirement up front of how long residency has to be before a person can even run in a ward, which to me sometimes I've always thought that's a little too strict, but that begins with an established person in a ward being eligible to be elected by residents of the ward. And I think in November, anybody who runs, I think anybody who is elected doesn't see themselves moving out by January 1. Or probably nothing in the foreseeable future. Things do happen. So absent of malice by an individual, things that happen, to me, the importance of what the charter is saying is that the residents said, we want this person to represent us for the next 2 years. And because that person is unexpectedly moved out of the ward, doesn't mean they don't want them to be their voice. And I think that voice is important, and I think that's what the charter is protecting. So without adding language to the charter, I don't think we can enforce other mass general laws, and I don't think there are vacancies because our charter doesn't allow that vacancy to take place. And that's what I think Solicitor Ball was pointing out in her opinion. Now, can we change things? Yes, but I think we'd have to look at the charter, not just an ordinance, because the ordinance, can become, as you stated, stricter than mass general law, but the ordinance cannot circumvent the charter, and a new mass general law cannot circumvent the existing charter unless it goes through proper channels, meaning the community has to agree to it in one way, form, or the other. So I know it's different from what we're hearing from everybody, but I agree with the city solicitor on this one, in that what happened on election day, and hopefully people that are elected, stay for the 2 years, or certainly intend to stay for the 2 years and not be moving out prematurely or intended to move out when they were running. So, but with that in mind, we do know other things have happened over the years where people have, and we brought it to people's attention, where people have not lived even in the city of Holyoke and lived on a farm in Chester, and yet kept the telephone in the home that they owned in Holyoke. No one did anything about it. We know another person who lived in West Holyoke who represented Ward 1 for many years, and nothing was done about it. And this is all history.
Yeah.
And the media wouldn't touch it, the law department wouldn't touch it, no one would touch it. And, that to me is malice. That to me is willfully, deceiving the residents that voted you in. But I think when someone, there is a time limit on this because, the end of the term or the election comes up every 2 years, you're not living there, you can't run. And even if you moved out and now you want to move back in and run again, does the 3-year rule kick in? So, food for thought, but I agree with the solicitor on this one.
Okay, so what is the will of the committee on this? I think.
Councilor Rivera has his hand up.
Oh, Councilor Rivera.
Thank you. I just, Councilor McGivern, I really appreciate your point of view. You literally said a lot of what I was going to say, so I thank you. And if I win again, I'm going to miss your point of view on the council. Thank you.
Okay, so is there a motion that somebody wants to offer on this order?
Motion that, I feel like we should say yes, so motion, we say no to this order? I don't know the proper terminology.
Motion that the order be complied with?
We could,
Not complied with.
Denied. That can be the motion.
Motion
If
that the order
it's
be denied.
seconded, that it's complied with, could be the motion if it's seconded. If the committee agrees that creating the ordinance would not be in accordance with the city charter, and we've done that review and we've had that discussion, and the majority of the committee believes that to be the case, then we could say that we've done the review and that we find the order complied with because it doesn't fit within the framework as we understand it right now.
Okay.
I mean, I think we have some disagreement on that, we have some disagreement on that in the committee, but the majority of the committee makes the recommendation, right?
So I'll second Councilor Givner's motion that the motion be complied with.
Okay, so we have a motion before us that this order has been complied with. So all in favor, Councilor Maldonado Velez.
Yes.
Councilor Givner.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Jourdain.
Yes.
Councilor Bacon. I'm going to say no, and it'll be 4-1 recommended to the council that it's complied with because we did our due diligence review. So thank you all. Item 7, I'll entertain a motion to take it up.
Second.
All in favor? Item 7.
Aye.
Now, what remains on the table is to further amend to return this language to section 2-153 of our ordinance. In special cases, the mayor or city council through a majority vote may authorize or require the department to secure the advice or services of such additional counselors as they may deem best. No money shall be paid for legal services except as expressly authorized by this chapter. The mayor shall fund any authorization approved by the city council under this section. So we have a notation on here that the first half of the order was adopted and that the other half of the order was tabled. But because the order's been acted on, I think the proper order would be to call this complied with, and a future order would need to be filed if this continues to want to be addressed as some kind of Scribner's error or some other action to be taken. And I think that would properly be done with a separate order. So if committee agrees with me, I'd like to entertain a motion that this is complied with.
So moved.
I'll second that motion, just briefly under discussion.
Counselor Jourdain?
Yeah, so myself and the council president filed this to clean up these two sections that used to be in the ordinance that I think were inadvertently removed. We put one of them back. This other section, like to continue to have this conversation, perhaps with the law department or otherwise, about how we manage the second part, and it's not pressing at the moment, so I would just as soon give this complied with. I think that works, and then I think we probably do some rewording in a standalone order in the future.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands on the motion. Counselor Maldonado Velez?
Yes.
Counselor Givner?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Jourdain?
Yes.
Counselor Bacon, yes. So that passes 5-0 that this is complied with. All right. Item 8, we're leaving on the table because we're waiting for the planning board recommendation and they did not send one over. I was thinking maybe we'd get one tonight, but we did not, okay? So I'd entertain a motion to take up items 9 and 10 as a package.
Chair Bacon, I just
Yes.
wanted, if it was okay, I just wanted to give an update on to 8, because I was in the planning board earlier, before
Oh.
I came on to the council.
Oh, well then,
So,
Well-
no, it's just, they have not done their recommendation yet, but they,
Right.
do have a continued hearing, for next week. They actually added another meeting due to the election, the primary on the 26th. So they're going to be meeting next week, and they have continued it to then. So hopefully they will have something, to the council very shortly, but I just wanted to give the councilors an update on that.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So are they, Counselor Puello, is your hand up on 8 or 9 and 10?
It's up on 8, Madam Chair, if I just could really quick. I mean,
Okay, all right, so what we need to do is take it up if people want to talk about it. So can I get a motion to take up item 8?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Item 8, zone change application from DR to BC for Jose Almonte at 549 to 551 South Bridge Street to rebuild convenience store following a recent fire. We closed our public hearing and we're waiting for the recommendation from planning. But Counselor Puello?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry about that.
That's all right.
I did get a text, I got a text message, and I just want to say, I don't know if Jane can maybe elaborate a little bit more about the planning board's meeting, because I am a little concerned, and some other folks are a little concerned, that maybe the planning board, I mean, God bless Mimi and everybody down there, but there's just some concern that their idea, that they're not too happy with this zone change. And I mean, I think somebody posted on Facebook that there should be this whole, process that should be redone for this. So I guess just my concern is, and, for the constituents down there, is that some people, I just think we really need to get this done as quick as we can here for this person. I think this was a pretty straightforward thing. And I've heard people say here in the past, oh, well, rules, you know, they're meant to be broken. And I think this is this is just such a good, beautiful thing that we should be doing. So, I mean, I don't know if there's any more information on what the planning board's doing, what's taking them so long, and, you know, what's the thought process there?
Well, so we understand that they'll meet next week, and hopefully we'll be getting something timely after that, and it should move. So I just put it on the agenda on the chance that they might complete it tonight. I wasn't sure if they would or not, but I'll keep it on the agenda for the next meeting so that it won't get lost in the jacket or anything.
Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that, because as I understand it, I
Sure.
mean, it is just a recommendation, so thank you.
Correct, but there are certain timelines, and we're within the timelines at this point. Okay,
Motion to table.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So we're tabled, waiting for the planning recommendation. So I'll entertain a motion on 9 and 10 to take them up as a package, and we can get an update from Attorney Monteleschi.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Item 9, City Council review the law for the enforcement of rights of reverter and extensions of reverter. And item 10, that the Law Department provide the City Council an inventory of all outstanding rights of reverter with parcel ID numbers, addresses, what the current reverter expiration date is, if it has one, and provide a summary of the condition that the reverter is based on, i.e. change of use, such as if no longer used as a golf course, or if no development by X date. And Attorney Monteleschi let us know that she's been working on this and has a general update for us and needs a little more time to get the specifics. But Attorney Monteleschi?
Yes, just quickly. So I had been working on this previously. We have been handling a couple of issues with respect to reverters. So I do have an ongoing list of the properties that we do have under reverter right now. And it's almost final. I think I have a few more up to add just because I have to look through some of the older files. We're just not scanned into our system, so I have to just look through paper files. So that is in the process and it's almost completed, so I hopefully should have that to you all shortly. And as to the enforcement rights of reverters and extensions of reverters, as Councilor Coelho had brought up previously, I did find some case law that touched on this, so I will be getting that ready into a legal opinion for you all to have as well for your discussion. It's just because it came on last week, I haven't had that much time to get
Understood. Just as a general interest, is that list that you're looking at 20, 50, 100? I mean, are we talking?
No, right now I think I have so far 7.
Okay. I just wasn't sure what the scope of the issue was. All right.
Yeah,
well,
no, it's just making sure that because we're having to check to make sure whether or not these reverters have been complied with, whether that term has been complied with, and whether or not they're actually still out there. So that's just what I'm double checking to make sure that there's not some old ones out there that we still have the right of reverter and that has not lapsed or that's been complied with. So I'm just double checking that to make sure I give you guys the most accurate information.
Okay, thank you. It sounds manageable anyway.
Yes, it's manageable.
All right, so then I'd like to entertain a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. So this.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.
Good night,
Have a
everyone.
good night. And if I didn't say it officially, the meeting is adjourned.